It was the kind of day that Elon Musk had seen 1,000 times before, an important meeting, an entourage of advisors, and a growing list of ambitious projects piling up on his desk. But this day was different. It started like any other, but little did he know, everything was about to come crashing down. The courtroom was buzzing with tension, and Elon could feel it in his bones. Today wasn't just about business, it was personal. As he stepped into the high-ceilinged, marble-lined courtroom, the murmurs of the crowd quieted. He adjusted his tie, the cool air from the large windows brushing against his skin, but there was something else he couldn't shake off, the feeling that something unexpected was about to happen. Musk had been through many challenges in his life, from building Tesla against all odds to launching SpaceX with the kind of ambition that could make anyone pause. But today, none of those triumphs seemed to matter. The judge, a man known for his brutal, no-nonsense approach, was about to take the stage, and the world was watching. Elon's lawyers stood close by, their faces tight with worry. They had prepared for this. They had prepared for everything. Yet the moment the judge walked in, the weight of the situation hit him harder than any launch failure or tech setback. The room was electric, charged with anticipation. This wasn't just a legal case, it was the battle of a lifetime. Mr. Musk, the judge began, his voice cold, a sharp contrast to the warmth of the courtroom's marble floors. Let's get one thing straight. Your reputation precedes you, but today, it's not about your empire or your fortune. Today, you'll answer for your actions. Elon had faced many adversaries, investors, journalists, even competitors, but never like this. There was a calculated, almost malicious glint in the judge's eyes. The judge's words were like daggers, piercing through the self-assured walls Elon had carefully built over the years. The press was here in full force, phones out, cameras flashing. This was no ordinary trial. This wasn't just about business disputes or stock prices. There was something deeper at play, something more sinister. And Elon Musk was about to find out what it was. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Elon found himself lost in the moment. The reminder of public perception, of how easily everything could be turned against him, settled in. His mind wandered for a brief moment. How did it come to this? How did his ambition and drive, once celebrated, become the very thing that placed him at the mercy of the court? The weight of the world seemed to press on his shoulders, and for the first time in a long while, Elon didn't have the answers. As the judge continued, Musk felt the temperature in the room drop. It was as if the very air had thickened, and each word from the judge cut deeper. This wasn't just a legal process, it felt personal. Elon Musk, you are a man who has made a name for himself through technology, innovation, and relentless ambition. But does that give you the right to play fast and loose with the law? Elon's jaw tightened. He had heard worse before, this wasn't new. He had built a company from nothing. He had taken on the impossible and crushed it. But today, none of that mattered. The judge's words hit too close to home. You see, Mr. Musk, the judge continued, it's not enough to build your empire on innovation. At some point, you have to face the consequences of your actions, and today, the time has come. The room was silent. The press, who had been snapping photos and recording everything, paused to catch their breath. No one had expected this. The public persona of Elon Musk, unshakable, confident, almost godlike, was now being challenged in a way no one anticipated. Elon straightened his back, his mind racing. There was a moment, a brief, fleeting moment, when his heart skipped a beat, the overwhelming weight of the situation pressing on him. Was this really happening? Could everything he'd worked for be dismantled here, in this cold, sterile courtroom? But there was something else stirring beneath the surface. Musk's mind was always calculating, always searching for the next move. He wasn't about to back down from this. He was a fighter. He knew that this was just the beginning, whatever this judge had planned, it would take more than cruel words to take him down. The judge's voice broke through the tension, a sharp crack that brought Elon back to reality. Let's be clear here. This isn't about your wealth, your fame, or your so-called genius. This is about justice. And I won't let your arrogance or your power shield you from the consequences of your actions. Elon felt a stir of defiance. The judge was right about one thing: this wasn't about his wealth or his fame. This was about something much deeper. It was about the people who had come to rely on him, to look up to him, and perhaps, to idolize him. This was about his legacy, one that he was determined to protect at all costs. He met the judge's gaze, unflinching. "Your Honor," Elon began, his voice calm but firm. "I'm here because I believe in what I'm doing. I'm here because I've always believed that the impossible is just the beginning. And I'm not afraid of facing the truth. But I will not be brought down by baseless accusations." The judge raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by Musk's bold response. For a moment, the tension in the room shifted, but only slightly. It was clear that this was not going to be an easy battle. As the judge prepared to continue, Musk's mind raced. He knew there was more at play here than just a courtroom drama. Someone was pulling the strings. Someone wanted to see him fall. But who? And why? The public was watching. The press was recording. And for the first time in a long while, Elon Musk was unsure of what the future held. But one thing was certain: he wasn't going down without a fight. And as the courtroom awaited the next move, Musk could feel it: the story of his life was about to take a dramatic turn. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Elon Musk had always been a dreamer, a visionary who refused to accept the world as it was. His story began long before he became a household name. Long before he was the billionaire founder of Tesla, SpaceX, and countless other ventures, he was just a young boy in Pretoria, South Africa, who knew he was meant for something bigger. From a young age, Elon had a fierce determination. He wasn't like other kids in his class. While they were busy playing outside, he was holed up in his room, devouring books on science fiction, technology, and engineering. The stories of space exploration and futuristic cities fueled his imagination, and he dreamed of shaping a world that looked just like the ones he read about. But his reality was anything but glamorous. His childhood was not without its struggles. His parents, though successful in their own right, had a rocky relationship, and Elon's family life was complicated. He often found himself caught between his mother, May Musk, a model and dietitian, and his father, Elon Musk, an engineer with a complicated personality. Despite the tension, Elon's mind always wandered to the stars. As a teenager, his love for technology blossomed. At 12, Elon created his first piece of software, a video game called Blaster, which he sold for $500. This early entrepreneurial success sparked something within him. He began to understand that if he could create something that people wanted, he could change the world. But it wasn't just about making money, it was about making an impact. His family eventually split, and Elon made the bold decision to leave South Africa and move to Canada, where he enrolled at Queen's University before transferring to the University of Pennsylvania in the United States. Elon was determined to find a way to make his mark in the world of technology, and by the time he reached his mid-20s, he was on the verge of something extraordinary. It wasn't long before Musk became a part of the Silicon Valley scene. In the early 1990s, he founded Zip2, a company that created software for newspapers to have an online presence. The idea was ahead of its time, but it was this forward-thinking attitude that would later become Musk's hallmark. With Zip2, he sold the company for nearly $300 million at just 27 years old. It was the first major success of many to come, but Musk wasn't satisfied with just the financial gain. He had bigger plans. He soon co-founded X.com, which would later become PayPal, the online payment system that revolutionized the way the world transferred money. In 2002, PayPal was acquired by eBay for $1.5 billion in stock. While many would have considered it a dream come true, Elon saw it differently. He wasn't driven by money, he was driven by a desire to change the world. This pattern of rejecting the conventional in favor of the visionary would become his signature. But even after these early successes, Elon's journey was anything but smooth. He had to navigate the intense scrutiny of investors, critics, and competitors who constantly doubted his ability to turn ambitious dreams into reality. He was viewed by some as a reckless idealist, and the media often ridiculed him for his eccentric ideas. The pressure was intense, but Musk thrived under it, using it as fuel for his next big challenge. He set his sights on space. In 2002, Musk founded SpaceX with the goal of reducing the cost of space travel and eventually making life multiplanetary. This venture, unlike any other he had undertaken, was fraught with failure. The early launches of the Falcon 1 rocket ended in disaster, and Musk's critics were relentless. Yet, he pressed on. As the weeks turned into months and the months into years, Musk poured everything he had into SpaceX, his money, his energy, and his vision. By 2008, SpaceX was facing bankruptcy. Elon had to make a choice: he could shut down the company and walk away with his fortune, or he could take one last shot. In a dramatic final attempt, Musk invested his last personal funds into the company, pushing SpaceX to launch its first successful mission in 2008. This marked the beginning of the company's rise, and soon, SpaceX became one of the most innovative and successful aerospace companies in the world. Around the same time, Musk was also busy with Tesla, a company he joined in 2004, after being approached by Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenning, the original founders. Tesla was struggling, and Musk took control, steering the company toward electric cars. He poured his expertise into Tesla's development, eventually unveiling the Roadster in 2008. The electric vehicle market was still in its infancy, and many were skeptical of Musk's chances. Yet, against all odds, Tesla became a symbol of innovation. But it wasn't just the tech world that took notice of Elon Musk. He quickly became a larger-than-life figure in the media, with his eccentric personality and relentless work ethic becoming part of his public persona. The world started to see him as a real-life Tony Stark, a genius inventor and entrepreneur who could do anything, from revolutionizing electric cars to launching reusable rockets into space. Elon's influence extended far beyond the world of tech. He became the poster child for Silicon Valley ambition, a self-made billionaire who never backed down from a challenge. Yet, his personal life, especially his relationships, was often at odds with his public image. Musk had been married 3 times, twice to actress Tallulah Riley, and had 5 children. His family life was often tumultuous, with tabloids closely following every twist and turn in his romantic endeavors. Yet, despite his personal struggles, Musk remained focused on his companies, pushing himself and his employees to achieve what seemed impossible. It was this relentless drive that made Musk both admired and controversial. He was a man of extremes, driven by his vision but at times blind to the cost it took on his personal life. His ambition led him to take risks that others would have never dared, but it also made him a lightning rod for criticism. The very things that made him a genius in the eyes of his followers also made him a polarizing figure in the public eye. Now, as he stood in the courtroom, facing a judge who seemed intent on tearing him down, Musk was reminded of the countless battles he had fought before. He had stared down failure more times than he cared to count. He had rebuilt companies from the brink of collapse. He had turned the impossible into reality. But this was different. This was personal. This was a fight that threatened not only his career but his legacy. And as the judge continued to lecture him, Musk couldn't help but wonder, was this the beginning of the end of his empire? And for the first time in years, Elon Musk felt something unfamiliar, a flicker of doubt. As the judge's harsh words reverberated through the courtroom, Elon Musk stood frozen, the weight of the moment pressing on him. He had faced many challenges in his life, being laughed at for his electric car idea, the early failures of SpaceX, but this? This felt different. It wasn't just a battle for his companies, it was a battle for his identity. The judge's voice boomed again, cutting through Elon's thoughts. Mr. Musk, your actions have far-reaching consequences, not just for you, but for the thousands who trust in your vision. Do you honestly think that your wealth and influence excuse you from the laws that govern the rest of us? The words stung like a slap. It wasn't the first time he'd been accused of overstepping, of believing that the rules didn't apply to him. But today, it felt more like an accusation that cut to the core of who he was, a man who had dedicated his entire life to pushing boundaries, to creating a future where the impossible became possible. Musk's lawyers shifted uncomfortably beside him. They had been prepared for a rough ride in this trial, but this level of hostility was something none of them had anticipated. They had seen the judge's track record, his tendency to go after big names with ruthless precision. But they had assumed that Musk's success, his track record, and his massive following would make him somewhat untouchable. But this wasn't just any court case. This wasn't about product defects or faulty stock options. This was about accusations far more serious, accusations of corporate misdeeds, misleading the public, and making false promises. The media had already seized on every part of the case, portraying Elon as everything from a reckless entrepreneur to a delusional madman. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Musk's mind raced. He had faced battles before, but this was different. This wasn't just about his companies or his reputation, it was about the future of the industries he had worked tirelessly to build. Tesla. SpaceX. The Boring Company. Neuralink. They all depended on the public's trust. If the judge ruled against him, it could send shockwaves through his entire empire. It wasn't just about a loss in the courtroom, it was about the potential collapse of everything he had worked for. The media was already having a field day. Headlines were popping up faster than Musk could process. Elon Musk's legal nightmare was plastered across every major news outlet. The more time passed, the more pressure mounted. And the judge? He wasn't letting up. You've had a history of being less than transparent with the public, Mr. Musk, the judge continued. But now, it's time to answer for it. Musk could feel the eyes of the courtroom on him, lawyers, reporters, even his closest advisors, all waiting for him to speak. But what could he say? The accusations were piling up, and no amount of success or innovation could shield him from the mess he was now embroiled in. His thoughts turned to the people who had stood by him, his investors, his employees, his family. How could he protect them from the fallout of this? Every decision he made in the coming days would be scrutinized, and if things went wrong, it wouldn't just be his legacy on the line. The future of the projects he cared so deeply about could be at risk. Your Honor, Elon finally spoke, his voice steady, though his heart was racing. I have always been transparent in my endeavors. I've always believed in the future, in technology, and in progress. My companies have advanced human civilization in ways no one ever thought possible. Tesla has pushed the world toward sustainable energy. SpaceX is making space travel a reality. And Neuralink? Well, we're on the brink of changing humanity's relationship with technology itself. The judge interrupted, his tone biting. Mr. Musk, you might have grand visions, but that doesn't absolve you from accountability. And no matter how innovative your companies are, you can't hide behind them forever. The room seemed to close in around him. The words stung more than he cared to admit, but this wasn't the time to break down. This was the moment to fight back, to prove that he was more than just a media spectacle. This was about integrity. This was about the world he was trying to build. The judge's eyes narrowed as he leaned forward, his voice dropping. The fact remains, you've made decisions that have endangered not just your companies, but the people who rely on them. And if you think you can talk your way out of this, think again. Musk stood his ground. He had weathered worse storms than this. But something inside him was shifting, something he couldn't ignore. The legal system, the media, the public, everyone seemed to be lining up against him. And though he had always been able to count on his relentless drive and ability to outsmart the system, this time felt different. The stakes were higher. The risks, more profound. His thoughts flashed to his children. He had always promised them that he was working toward a better future for humanity. But now, he wasn't just fighting for them, he was fighting for everyone who believed in the impossible. For the engineers at Tesla, the astronauts at SpaceX, and the scientists at Neuralink. For the world that was depending on him. Your Honor, Elon said again, his voice lower this time, but unwavering. I don't shy away from responsibility. I stand by the work my teams have done. Yes, I've taken risks. Yes, I've pushed boundaries. But that's what innovation requires, taking risks. I've made mistakes, but I've never lied. I've never deliberately misled anyone. The judge's face remained impassive. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Musk had always been able to bounce back from failure. But now, he wondered if he could bounce back from this. The public's perception of him was rapidly shifting, and the trial was turning into a media circus. As Musk continued to lock eyes with the judge, something stirred inside him, a feeling of defiance. The man sitting before him might hold the power to shape the outcome of this trial, but he didn't have the power to destroy what Musk had built. No matter how much the judge wanted to tear him down, Musk knew one thing for sure, he would not back down. Not this time. He had spent his entire life defying expectations. And no matter how high the odds were stacked against him, he wasn't about to let one person, or a courtroom, be the end of his story. The rising conflict was undeniable. The courtroom was divided, and the stakes were becoming clearer than ever. But as the tension simmered, Elon Musk realized that the battle ahead wouldn't just be fought in the courtroom. It was a battle for his future, and the future of every dreamer who had ever dared to believe in the impossible. And this was just the beginning. The courtroom had quieted, but the buzz of tension still clung to the air like a heavy fog. Outside, the world was moving at a frantic pace, but inside, it felt as though time had slowed to a crawl. Every click of the clock on the wall, every rustle of papers, every shuffle of feet seemed amplified. Elon stood there, waiting, aware that his entire future rested on the delicate balance of the judge's decision and the jury's perception. The media frenzy had only intensified in the days following the trial's start. News outlets across the world were covering every angle. His empire was being scrutinized in ways it never had been before. Some headlines painted him as a visionary under attack by the establishment, while others painted him as a reckless mogul who had finally gone too far. It was a perfect storm, a whirlwind that threatened to tear apart everything he had worked so hard to build. But despite the mounting pressure, something inside Elon had shifted. There was no turning back now. He had always embraced challenges, always fought for what he believed in, but this was more personal than anything he had faced before. This trial wasn't just about corporate responsibility, it was about proving to the world that his vision had value. It was about defending the dream that had consumed his life, a future where humanity could thrive on other planets, a world powered by clean energy, a new frontier for human achievement. As he sat in the courtroom, his mind drifted back to the early days of SpaceX. The countless sleepless nights. The broken rockets. The cold, harsh stares from investors and industry experts who doubted him. Those days were full of failure, but also full of hope. He had bet everything, his fortune, his reputation, his soul, on a single idea, that space travel could be as commonplace as air travel. That humanity could become a multiplanetary species. It was that vision, that relentless pursuit of a dream, that had fueled him. And now, it felt like he was standing at the edge of that dream. But it wasn't just a dream anymore, it was a battleground. His vision for the future was at war with the system that had long resisted change. The defense team had made their case. They had put up a strong front, presenting Musk as a man of integrity and innovation. They had argued that his companies were transforming the world for the better, that mistakes had been made, but they were part of the risk-taking process inherent in every groundbreaking venture. Still, the judge was unmoved. The media had already painted him as someone who had crossed the line, and the pressure to deliver a verdict was mounting. But Elon wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. As the hours wore on, the defense's final arguments were made. It was clear that the jury was divided. Some were sympathetic to Elon's vision, while others were swayed by the media's portrayal of his actions as reckless and irresponsible. The world was watching, and every move he made would be analyzed. In the middle of all the chaos, a sudden phone call interrupted Elon's thoughts. He pulled his phone from his pocket, quickly stepping outside the courtroom to take it. It was a text from his longtime friend and SpaceX engineer, Gwynne Shotwell. "Elon, we need to talk. Something big is happening with the Falcon 9. It's risky, but it could change everything for SpaceX. We need your decision. Now." The message hit him like a punch to the gut. His mind immediately shifted from the courtroom drama back to his passion, the one thing that had always driven him forward, SpaceX. He quickly texted back, "What's happening? Is everything alright with the launch schedule?" "Not exactly. There's a malfunction in the Falcon 9's engine cooling system. It could potentially cause a failure during the next mission. We think we can fix it, but it will take time. You need to decide if we should delay the launch or move forward as planned." Elon stared at the phone screen for a moment, his heart racing. This was the kind of decision that could make or break SpaceX. A launch failure, even a small one, could cripple the company's credibility and send shockwaves through the entire aerospace industry. It could send a message that Musk was too ambitious, too reckless, and that his grand vision wasn't worth the risk. But Elon had never been one to shy away from difficult decisions. It wasn't in his DNA. SpaceX had always thrived on taking risks, on pushing the boundaries of what was possible. If they delayed the mission now, it might be seen as a sign of weakness, of indecision. But if they moved forward and succeeded, it would reaffirm everything he had ever believed in. He quickly responded, "Proceed. We can fix it, and we will." With a deep breath, he put the phone away and returned to the courtroom. The decision had been made, SpaceX would press forward, despite the risks. But now, he needed to focus on what was happening in the room. The trial wasn't over, and this moment of clarity had to fuel him in the next phase of the battle. As he re-entered the courtroom, the judge was finishing his final remarks. The tension was unbearable. Musk's heart pounded in his chest as the judge turned to the jury, who sat at the edge of their seats, waiting for the verdict. "Members of the jury," the judge's voice rang out. "You have heard the arguments, seen the evidence, and listened to the testimony. It is now time to deliberate. This case is about more than just business, it's about accountability, trust, and the responsibility that comes with power." Elon's palms began to sweat. The room seemed to shrink as the weight of the moment bore down on him. But then, as if in slow motion, the words that he had been dreading, and yet, somehow expecting, came next. "Tomorrow," the judge continued, "the jury will render its verdict. We will reconvene then." Elon stood motionless for a moment. It was over. For now. He had survived the court's brutal onslaught. But the war wasn't over. Tomorrow, he would face the final battle. Would his empire crumble, or would he rise again, stronger than ever? The battle for the future was only just beginning. The next day, Elon sat in the same cold, sterile courtroom, his thoughts swirling. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation, and though he tried to stay composed, there was no denying the weight pressing on him. Today, he would face the judgment of not just the law, but of public perception. The jury was deliberating, the media was circling like vultures, and the entire world was watching. Every minute felt like an eternity. His heart was pounding in his chest, the sense of urgency growing with every tick of the clock. He wasn't the same man who had walked into the courtroom the previous day. Last night had changed him. The phone call about the Falcon 9, the decision to push ahead with the risky launch, it was a wake-up call. The truth was, he had been so consumed by the court case, the media circus, and the public scrutiny, that he had almost forgotten why he was here in the first place. He was here because of the bigger vision. The mission. The dream of making humanity a multiplanetary species, of revolutionizing the way the world used energy, of creating technology that could change lives. But all of that now seemed so fragile, as if it could all come crashing down at the whim of a few people in a jury box. Musk stared at the door, waiting for the moment when the verdict would come, when the future of his companies and his vision would be decided. It was a chilling thought. For years, he had been the one pulling the strings, taking risks, making the tough calls. But now, it was out of his hands. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours, and then, at last, the doors to the courtroom opened. The jury filed in, their expressions unreadable. The room fell silent as the foreman stood, holding the fate of Elon Musk in his hands. "Your Honor," the foreman began, his voice steady but carrying the weight of the moment. "We, the jury, have reached a verdict." Elon felt his heart stop. It was happening. This was it. The moment that would define his future. "Will the defendant please rise?" the judge called. Elon stood slowly, his legs feeling heavy. He could feel the eyes of everyone in the room on him, the jury, the lawyers, the reporters, the spectators. His palms were clammy, his throat dry, but he kept his composure. He had to. The foreman turned toward the judge, then back to the courtroom. "We find the defendant guilty of gross negligence." The words hit him like a punch to the gut. He had heard the accusations, had known the stakes, but hearing those words, the ones that would change everything, was still a shock. The jury had spoken. The dream he had worked his entire life for, the very foundation of his companies, was now in jeopardy. Guilty. He hadn't seen it coming. Not like this. He could feel his breath catch in his chest. The world seemed to tilt, the ground beneath him becoming unsteady. His mind was racing. What would happen next? Would Tesla be forced to shut down? Would SpaceX crumble under the weight of the fallout? How would his employees, his family, and the people who believed in him react to this? The room was silent as the judge spoke again. "Mr. Musk, I hereby sentence you to..." Elon barely heard the next words. They were a blur. His mind was spinning, his body tensed, every muscle in his body screaming for release. The room seemed to stretch as the judge continued to speak, but Elon couldn't focus on what was being said. His thoughts were consumed by the reality of the situation. He had made it this far, he had defied the odds, built a technological empire, and revolutionized industries. But now, he was being punished for it. He had always known that risk was part of the game. But this was different. This was a life-altering consequence, a punishment for being too ambitious, too bold. "Mr. Musk, your sentence will be delivered with appropriate penalties, including a significant fine and a mandatory period of probation. You may appeal this ruling. However, the damage has been done." The judge's words echoed in Elon's ears. Damage. It felt like a weight pressing down on his chest, squeezing the air from his lungs. The world outside might have seen this as a mere courtroom drama, but for Elon, this was more than a legal battle, it was a personal battle. His reputation, his vision, everything he had fought for was on the line. As he stood there, facing the consequences of his actions, something inside him shifted. There was a part of him that wanted to break down, to scream, to give in to the crushing weight of it all. But then, he remembered something that had always been his driving force. Failure was never permanent. It was just another obstacle, another test. If there was one thing Elon Musk knew, it was that nothing worth having ever came easy. And this? This was just another test. Your Honor, Elon finally spoke, his voice calm but unwavering, I will appeal. And I will fight for the future I believe in. The judge looked at him with a mixture of skepticism and judgment, but there was a hint of respect in his eyes. We shall see, Mr. Musk. As the courtroom emptied, Elon made his way out of the building, feeling the weight of the world pressing down on him. The media, the public, the people who had been watching him from the sidelines, all of them had their opinions. Some would see this as his downfall. Others, perhaps, would see it as the moment where he would rise again. And that's when it hit him, the twist. He wasn't just fighting for his companies, his fortune, or his reputation. He was fighting for something much bigger. The future. He stepped outside into the bright sunlight, the weight of the verdict still heavy on his shoulders, but a new sense of determination rising within him. His mind was already working on what came next. What came after the storm? The game wasn't over. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The emotional climax of the trial had left him rattled, but not broken. Musk had always believed in the impossible, and now, more than ever, he was determined to prove that nothing could stand in the way of a dreamer. No matter how many times the world tried to tear him down, he would keep going. For every challenge, there would be a new opportunity. And this time, the twist was clear. Musk wasn't just going to fight the system. He was going to change it. With the verdict hanging over his head like a dark cloud, he walked toward the future, ready for whatever came next. The world would soon see that Elon Musk wasn't just a name, they would see that he was a force to be reckoned with. The days following the trial were a blur of legal jargon, media interviews, and non-stop strategizing. Elon spent more time than ever in meetings with his legal team, trying to navigate the complexity of the appeals process. The world was still buzzing with the aftermath of the verdict, but Elon's mind was elsewhere. He knew that what truly mattered now wasn't what the media or the courts thought of him, it was the future he was fighting to build. Despite the verdict, Musk remained resolute. He had always known that the path he walked was fraught with obstacles, that the bigger the dream, the greater the resistance. He had faced failure before, and each time he rose again. This time wouldn't be different. There was no other choice. Elon found himself reflecting more than ever before. As he walked through the halls of Tesla's headquarters, he thought about how far he had come. He remembered the early days of the company, the long nights of sleeplessness, the moments when it seemed like the dream might slip through his fingers. There were moments of doubt, but he always pushed through. The critics had said it couldn't be done, that electric cars would never work, that SpaceX was too risky, too ambitious. But he had proved them wrong. And yet, this trial, this judgment from the courtroom, felt different. It wasn't just the pressure of defending himself against legal charges. It was the weight of the world's expectations, the spotlight on him, and the constant reminder that his every move was being scrutinized. In a way, it was as if the stakes had been raised. The question wasn't just whether he could succeed anymore, it was whether the vision itself could survive. Walking into his office, Elon sat at his desk and looked out the window at the busy streets of California. His mind wandered to his children, his family, and the people who had supported him. His vision wasn't just for him, it was for them, too. It was about creating a world that was better, more sustainable, and more interconnected. It was about making a difference, one big idea at a time. As he thought about all of this, he also thought about the way people saw him. The media had painted him as a villain, a tech mogul who had overstepped his bounds, a billionaire playing with the fate of millions. But Elon knew there was more to the story. He wasn't in it for the money or the fame. He was in it for something much bigger than that. His legacy wasn't going to be defined by a courtroom decision, by a fine, or by a probation sentence. His legacy would be the technology he had helped create, the companies he had built, and the lives that were changed because of his work. Whether or not the world recognized it, his impact was real. In the days following the verdict, Elon made it clear to his employees, his partners, and his supporters that he wasn't going anywhere. He would fight the legal battles, yes, but his focus would remain on what mattered most: the work. The dream. The future. Tesla would continue to innovate, SpaceX would continue to explore the stars, and the vision of a better, more sustainable world would continue to drive everything he did. The world might be watching, but he had always known that the most important audience was the future. As he left his office and walked out into the California sunshine, Elon felt a renewed sense of purpose. The trial had been tough, and it was far from over, but it had reminded him of why he did what he did. There was no giving up. Not now. Not ever. In the end, Elon knew that the true measure of success wasn't about winning or losing, it was about making a lasting impact. And he was just getting started. This was only the beginning. The real journey was still ahead. And whatever came next, he would face it head-on. The world hadn't seen the last of Elon Musk. Elon sat in the dimly lit room, surrounded by his closest advisors, the legal team, and a few trusted executives. The table before him was scattered with papers, blueprints, and digital screens flashing with data. But the mood in the room was far from optimistic. The trial's aftermath had left a mark, both legally and emotionally. Though the verdict had not been in his favor, Elon knew this was far from over. The stakes had only gotten higher, and he would not back down. "I know we're all feeling the pressure, but let's not forget what we're fighting for," Elon said, his voice steady despite the tension that filled the air. "Our mission hasn't changed. We're here to change the world. And we're not going to let a courtroom stop us from doing that." The room fell silent as the weight of his words sank in. The team had been through a lot in recent weeks. They had seen the headlines, watched the press conferences, and felt the skepticism from those who had once believed in him. But Elon was determined to lead them through this storm, just as he had led them through countless challenges before. He had faced worse before, he had come close to losing everything with SpaceX and Tesla on the brink of bankruptcy. But each time, he had risen, and so would they. One of his senior engineers, Sarah, spoke up. "Elon, we know the mission. But the reality is, the media and public perception of us has changed. People are questioning everything. There's a real threat to the companies, to the people we've built around us. What's the plan moving forward?" Elon leaned forward, his gaze sharp. He could see the concern in Sarah's eyes, the worry etched across every face in the room. They had every right to be concerned. The pressure was immense, and the legal ramifications of the trial could have long-lasting effects on both Tesla and SpaceX. But he had never been one to shy away from adversity. "We push forward. We double down," Elon replied firmly. "We focus on innovation, on the work that truly matters. Tesla's next big leap is around the corner, and SpaceX is on the verge of something huge. We're not just going to sit back and let this trial define us. We're going to show the world why we're here and why we've always been ahead of the curve." The room slowly began to buzz with quiet approval, the uncertainty fading as the team found their confidence again. Elon's vision had always been one of perseverance and relentless drive, and it was clear that his resolve had not been shaken. They had been through the hardest parts before, this was just another obstacle, and it was one they would face together. But the world outside wasn't so easily convinced. Elon had spent years building his empire, but now, every decision was under a microscope. The pressure from shareholders, the media frenzy, and the heightened scrutiny from regulators had created an atmosphere of uncertainty. In the coming weeks, headlines continued to roll in, each one a reminder of the challenges ahead. But amid the noise, there were glimmers of hope. The next phase of Tesla's expansion was underway, plans for new battery technology were moving forward, and the first fully autonomous vehicles were already being tested. SpaceX's Mars mission was gaining momentum, and Elon had just received confirmation that the next Starship test flight was on track. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. Elon knew that in order to silence the critics and prove that the verdict would not define him, he had to deliver something groundbreaking. And fast. One evening, after the team had left for the day, Elon sat alone in his office, staring out the window at the sprawling city below. The familiar hum of his thoughts filled the room. He had built so much already, he had changed the game, and yet, it still wasn't enough. It was never enough. He needed to show the world that failure wasn't the end, that every setback was just an opportunity to come back stronger. The thought of quitting had never crossed his mind. He was beyond that. But he knew that the next move had to be monumental. His phone buzzed, pulling him from his thoughts. It was a message from Gwynne Shotwell, president of SpaceX. "Elon, we're ready to take the next step. The Falcon 9 booster recovery project is looking promising, and we're on track for an unprecedented launch window next month. This could be the one to really make a statement." Elon smiled slightly, a flicker of excitement flashing across his face. This was it. SpaceX had been pushing the boundaries of space travel for years, but this particular mission had the potential to change everything. A successful Falcon 9 booster recovery could be the technological breakthrough he needed, an undeniable demonstration of innovation that no one could ignore. He typed a quick reply. "Let's do it. Make sure everything is ready. We're going to show the world that we're not just back, we're stronger than ever." The message sent, and Elon took a deep breath, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. He had a new focus. The trial may have dealt a blow, but the work was still his salvation. It was time to remind the world why he had come this far in the first place. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. Tesla continued to move forward with their new battery technology, but SpaceX took center stage. Elon personally oversaw every detail of the Falcon 9 mission, determined to make this the moment that would turn the tide. He met with engineers, discussed flight trajectories, and even personally tested some of the new software that would be used to guide the launch. The media continued to follow every step of the process, but something had changed. The relentless criticism was still there, but the undercurrent of anticipation was growing. People were starting to realize that despite the trial, Elon Musk was still the man who had taken us to space, who had brought electric cars to the mainstream, who had defied the odds and made the impossible possible. And when the day of the launch finally arrived, the world watched in awe as the Falcon 9 booster soared into the sky, performing flawlessly. The booster landed with a precision that took everyone by surprise, and SpaceX had done what many had thought impossible. The news cycle exploded, but this time, the headlines were different. People were talking about the technology, about the innovation, about the future. The critics had been silenced, at least for a moment. The world had seen what Musk and his companies were capable of, and they couldn't ignore it anymore. The road ahead would be long and filled with challenges. But Elon Musk had always believed that the greatest challenges were the ones worth fighting for. And now, the world would see just how far he was willing to go. In the quiet of the evening, sitting at his desk, Elon reflected on the whirlwind of the past few months. The legal challenges had tested his resolve, but they also brought something into sharp focus, the importance of maintaining control over the narrative. He wasn't just fighting for the future of his companies, he was fighting for his legacy, and he understood now that no one was going to hand that to him. He would have to fight for it, inch by inch. "What's next?" he muttered to himself, as his fingers drummed absently on the desk. It had been a long time since he allowed himself to ask that question in a way that didn't involve immediate crisis management. But with SpaceX's most recent breakthrough, he felt a renewed sense of possibility. Elon knew that for all the victories of the past, his ultimate mission remained unchanged, to create a world that was sustainable, connected, and beyond the reach of Earth's constraints. But what did that mean now? How could he keep the momentum of SpaceX's successful launch going and maintain the reputation of Tesla, which, despite all the challenges, continued to make strides in electric vehicle technology? Before he could delve too deep into his thoughts, the door to his office opened. Gwynne Shotwell, president of SpaceX, stepped in, her usual confidence reflected in her sharp, focused gaze. "We're on track for the next mission," she said, taking a seat across from him. The team is ready, but there's something else you need to know. Elon's eyebrow raised. What's going on? There's been some chatter about Tesla's next big move, Gwynn continued. You know how it goes, people are already wondering what's coming next. But there's also talk from the industry about the lawsuits piling up. It's not just the public perception anymore. We need to prepare for a potential shift in regulations. Elon leaned forward, his expression darkening. You mean to say, they're coming for us? Again? Not yet, but it's getting there. You've got people who want to see you fail. People who think you've overreached, not just legally but in the market, too, Gwynn said, eyes locked onto his. It's not just about what happened in court. There's a real risk that regulators will start tightening their grip on both Tesla and SpaceX. Elon ran a hand through his hair, frustration simmering beneath his calm demeanor. It wasn't the first time he had faced regulatory pushback, but this felt different. The legal troubles, the trial, and now the specter of regulation looming on the horizon, all of it threatened to slow down the progress they had made. But if there was one thing Elon knew how to do, it was adapt and overcome. So, what's our move? He asked, looking at Gwynn. We need to double down on what we know best, she said, her voice steady. Innovation. It's all about staying ahead of the curve. But we need to be smarter about the narrative. If we let them control the conversation, we lose. Elon nodded slowly, the gears turning in his mind. He was no stranger to adversity, and he knew that when the pressure was on, that's when the most revolutionary ideas came to life. But now, he needed to think bigger. He needed something more than just the usual breakthroughs. This time, he needed a statement. Something that would force the world to focus on the future, not the past. We're going to move fast, Elon declared, standing up. We're going to hit them where they don't expect it. We're not just going to survive, we're going to redefine everything. Gwynn gave him a knowing look. And how do you plan on doing that? Elon smiled, the familiar spark of ambition igniting within him once again. It's time for the next step in human progress. It's not just about electric cars or rockets anymore. It's time to bring humanity to Mars, once and for all. We're going to push forward with the Mars mission like never before. And not just the mission itself, let's make the idea of space exploration something people can't ignore. We'll partner with universities, tech innovators, and even governments, but we're going to do it on our own terms. Gwynn's expression shifted, a mixture of excitement and curiosity. You're thinking bigger than the next launch, aren't you? Much bigger, Elon said. We're going to make Mars a reality. We'll build the infrastructure to sustain human life. And we'll start now, laying the groundwork for the first colony on Mars. No more just talking about it. We're going to take the first steps toward colonization in the next 5 years. The audacity of the plan was breathtaking, even for Elon. But that's what he had always done, he dreamed big, and when the world told him it couldn't be done, he proved them wrong. This wasn't just about winning a legal battle or surviving a media storm, this was about changing the course of human history. Gwynn seemed to consider the enormity of the plan before responding. If anyone can pull it off, it's you. But this is going to require everything. A lot more than just rockets. I know, Elon said, his voice filled with quiet determination. But that's the point. We're not just building rockets. We're building the future. And if the world is going to keep doubting us, we'll just have to show them what's possible. As he spoke, his mind raced with the possibilities of the mission. He would need the best minds in the world. He would need governments to back him, or, at the very least, stay out of his way. But most importantly, he needed the people to believe in the dream. To see Mars not as an unreachable goal, but as the next frontier. Elon knew that this new battlefront, this bold, audacious mission, was the key to everything. The media would continue to cover his every move, the legal battles would drag on, but this would be different. This was his chance to make history. To set the course for humanity's future and show the world what true innovation meant. Mars wasn't just a dream. It was now a deadline. And Elon Musk wasn't about to let anything stand in the way of making it a reality. "Let's do this," he said to Gwyn, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "It's time to change the world, again." With that, the plans were set in motion. And in the weeks that followed, Elon's focus on Mars intensified. Meetings with the world's top engineers, astrophysicists, and visionaries became a daily routine. The Mars mission was no longer just a pipe dream, it was a clear and undeniable goal. And with every step, the world would be watching, waiting to see if Elon Musk would once again prove that no dream was too big, no goal too far. Mars was waiting. And Elon Musk was coming for it. Elon Musk's decision to push forward with the Mars mission wasn't just a leap into the unknown, it was a rallying cry to the world. The media picked up on it almost immediately, and within days, articles flooded the headlines, from major tech publications to the likes of the New York Times and BBC. There were debates, some calling it an audacious gamble and others, a visionary's dream that could change the course of history. But to Elon, it wasn't a gamble. It was the next step in humanity's evolution. He spent the next few weeks refining the plan, making decisions that would impact not only SpaceX but the entire global space industry. The world would have to follow, or be left behind. However, amidst all the attention and excitement, there was an undercurrent of tension. Elon knew that the true battle lay in the realm of politics and public perception. And it was there, in the midst of the rising pressure, that an unexpected ally would appear. It was a rainy afternoon in Silicon Valley when Elon received a call that he didn't expect. It was from none other than Mark Zuckerberg. "Hey, Elon, I think we need to talk," Mark's voice crackled through the phone. Elon furrowed his brow. "What's on your mind?" Mark continued, his tone unusually serious. "I know we've had our differences in the past. And I know you're focused on Mars right now. But I think we have a unique opportunity here, a way to push your mission forward in a way neither of us have thought of before." Elon sat up straight, intrigued despite himself. Zuckerberg was a player in a completely different field, focused on social media and virtual reality. What could he possibly want with space? "I'm listening," Elon replied, genuinely curious. Mark took a moment before responding. "What if we combine our strengths? I can help you leverage the power of social media to rally the public behind you. Imagine if we could get billions of people worldwide invested in your Mars mission. Not just as spectators, but as active participants, contributing ideas, funding, or even skills. It's a movement, not just a launch." Elon's mind began to race. Mark's idea had potential. The challenge with the Mars mission wasn't just the technical feasibility, it was creating a sense of unity and purpose. If people saw the mission as something that could impact their lives directly, it might be the spark they needed to get behind it. "I see where you're going with this," Elon said, nodding. "You're talking about crowdsourcing ideas and support for the mission. Getting people on board who might not traditionally be involved in space exploration." "Exactly," Mark said. "We'd use Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, every platform we have, to create a digital movement. You've already got a massive following. We'll help you expand it even further. If we can get the public excited, engaged, and invested, the political and corporate pushback will be much harder to sustain." Elon's mind was spinning now. It was a clever move. They'd be using the very thing that had become the backdrop for so much of the world's attention, the internet, to propel the mission to Mars forward. It could be the key to generating the grassroots support needed to navigate any legal or political roadblocks. "This could work," Elon said slowly, his thoughts now focused on the bigger picture. "But this is going to take a lot more than just social media posts. We'd need a whole platform dedicated to it. We need to get people to buy into the mission emotionally, and not just see it as a headline." Mark was quick to respond. "Exactly. And we'd build that platform together. A platform for people to connect to the Mars mission, where they can track progress, learn about the science, and even make a tangible contribution, be it through funding, expertise, or ideas. We'd make them feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. Elon smiled slightly, already imagining the possibilities. With Facebook's reach and his own vision, they could create a global movement. The resources were there, the talent was there, and the world was more connected than ever before. What had once been a pipe dream for a few select individuals could now become a mission for humanity as a whole. "All right, let's do this," Elon said, finally making his decision. "Let's take this idea to the next level." Over the next few weeks, Elon and Mark worked behind the scenes, crafting a plan that would change the game. They called it Mission Mars, Humanity's Leap. The platform was designed to be an interactive experience that allowed people from around the world to learn about the mission, contribute their ideas, and even participate in decision-making. The platform would also be a place to raise funds for the mission, something that Elon had always known would be a challenge. The money needed to push Mars exploration forward was astronomical, but if the people believed in it, they would help. Crowdfunding had been used for everything from art projects to tech startups, and now, it was going to fund a trip to Mars. It wasn't long before the platform went live. Mark's team at Facebook ensured it had all the right features: interactive maps showing the progress of the mission, live updates from SpaceX's development team, and a forum for users to propose their own ideas. There was even a section where individuals could sign up to be part of a potential Mars crew, albeit a long way off from becoming reality. To Elon's surprise, the response was overwhelming. Within hours, millions of people had signed up to support the mission. People from every corner of the globe were engaging, discussing the implications of space travel, the future of human civilization, and how they could contribute to the effort. The excitement and energy were palpable. The media caught wind of the collaboration between the two tech titans, and the news spread like wildfire. Articles were published in the major newspapers, while influencers and thought leaders praised the vision behind the project. The movement was born, and it was unstoppable. But not everyone was on board. In the following days, politicians and bureaucrats began to voice their concerns. Some worried about the safety of such an ambitious mission. Others feared the public-private partnership that had been forged between Elon, Mark, and their respective companies. Critics in Washington and Silicon Valley saw the project as an unchecked power grab, a potential overreach by billionaires who sought to control humanity's future. Despite the growing opposition, Elon and Mark remained resolute. They knew that in order to succeed, they would need to maintain control of the narrative and continue to rally the public behind them. The movement was no longer just about technology, it was about creating a collective vision of humanity's future in space. As the weeks passed, the Mission Mars platform grew into something more than they had ever imagined. It was no longer just an idea, it was becoming a global phenomenon, and with it, Elon Musk's dreams of reaching Mars were becoming more real than ever. But, as always, with progress came resistance. And this time, the battle would be fought not just in the courts or in the media, it would be fought in the hearts and minds of millions of people around the world. As the Mission Mars, Humanity's Leap platform gained traction, the excitement in the global public grew. From casual space enthusiasts to die-hard science fiction fans, everyone seemed to have an opinion on the venture. But while Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg celebrated the surge of enthusiasm and support, not everyone was on their side. As the numbers grew, so did the opposition. Governments, powerful organizations, and influential players in the space and tech industries began to take notice, and not in a supportive way. What had started as a dream to unite humanity in the race to space quickly became a political hot potato. A day after the announcement of the Mission Mars platform's success, a statement from the European Space Agency, ESA, surfaced. The ESA, which had been a quiet observer of SpaceX's advancements in private space travel, made its stance clear. The organization called Musk's ambition reckless, citing safety concerns and a disregard for international treaties regarding space exploration. Elon was not surprised. He'd known this would happen. Governments, particularly those with established space agencies, would feel threatened by the idea of private companies taking the lead in space exploration. The ESA wasn't the only organization pushing back. Soon after, the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs, UNOSA, issued its own critique, questioning the lack of oversight and regulation surrounding private space ventures. In Washington, the opposition was just as fierce. Senators, including some who had once been friendly toward Elon's ideas, began to speak out. "This is a dangerous precedent," said Senator Evelyn Harris, a longtime member of the Senate Committee on Science, Space, and Technology. "Elon Musk is playing with humanity's future, and we have no guarantee that he'll be able to deliver on his promises. The world doesn't need billionaires running a private space program. We need accountable, international cooperation to ensure the safety and prosperity of all." The backlash was swift and growing. Critics raised questions about the environmental impact of such a massive mission, the potential for monopolies in space, and whether or not Elon Musk had the moral authority to lead humanity's future into space. The critiques were loud, filled with accusations of hubris, arrogance, and unchecked ambition. Elon sat in his office, watching the news coverage as his phone rang incessantly. Media outlets clamored for interviews, and political figures demanded answers. But instead of retreating into defensive silence, Elon did what he always did when the pressure mounted: he doubled down. "We're not asking for permission to build the future," Elon said in an interview with CNN. "We're making history. And if you can't see the value in that, then you're looking at the wrong side of history. The future of humanity isn't a political game, it's a necessity. We need to be exploring Mars now, not in 100 years. He went on to explain that humanity's survival depended on becoming a multiplanetary species. He acknowledged the risks but argued that those risks were inherent in every great leap in human history. "The journey to Mars won't be easy," Elon said, his voice unwavering. "But it's something we have to do. If we don't, we risk the future of our children. And that's not a risk I'm willing to take." While many applauded his words, the controversy surrounding the mission only deepened. In Washington, a few key players, including Senator Harris, began pushing for new legislation that would increase regulatory oversight for private space companies. There were talks of restricting the scope of private space ventures until they could prove their plans were truly safe for humanity and the planet. Even within the tech world, there were those who saw the project as a colossal mistake. Some tech leaders quietly worried about the environmental impact of such an ambitious space program. Others were skeptical about Elon's ability to balance his various ventures, SpaceX, Tesla, Neuralink, and now, the Mars mission, without spreading himself too thin. Their concerns didn't stop at environmental factors. They questioned whether private space exploration could ever be as safe as government-backed programs like NASA. But Elon Musk wasn't easily deterred. He knew that every revolutionary idea had faced resistance. Every time someone tried to change the status quo, there would be forces that pushed back. The important thing was to stay focused on the vision. Mars wasn't just about the technology. It was about inspiring humanity, showing the world that the impossible could be done. However, amidst all the resistance, there was a surprising twist. A major ally, someone Elon hadn't anticipated reaching out to, threw their support behind the mission. Richard Branson, the founder of Virgin Galactic and a vocal advocate for commercial space travel, made a public statement endorsing Musk's vision. Branson, who had also been a pioneer in private space tourism, had once been a competitor to SpaceX but had always admired Elon's relentless drive. In a statement shared with the media, Branson said, "Elon Musk is pushing the boundaries of what is possible, and his vision of Mars is inspiring. I believe in the importance of collaboration, and if we are going to make space travel a reality for everyone, we need to support pioneers like him." The mission to Mars is a necessary step in the evolution of our species, and I look forward to seeing it succeed. Branson's words were not only supportive but also powerful. His endorsement of Musk's Mars mission was a game-changer. Branson had an established reputation in the space community, and his support brought much-needed credibility to the project. More importantly, it sent a message to the skeptics and critics that even those who were once rivals saw value in Elon's dream. The support from Branson was the first sign that the tides might be turning in Elon's favor. However, the battle was far from over. He still had to contend with powerful forces in Washington, Europe, and the tech industry. And the public's enthusiasm, though widespread, was still fragile. One wrong move, one failed test launch, and the backlash could be even more severe. But Elon was ready. He'd faced adversity before, and he knew that setbacks were part of the journey. The only way to overcome the opposition was to keep moving forward. As he sat back in his chair, reflecting on the mounting challenges and newfound support, one thing was clear: the fight for Mars was just beginning, and Elon Musk was not about to let anything stand in his way. The future of humanity was at stake, and he was determined to lead the charge. One way or another, he would get humanity to Mars. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? As the public outcry continued to grow, Elon Musk found himself not only defending the Mars mission but also defending his own credibility and ability to deliver on such an ambitious vision. The media frenzy surrounding the project had intensified, and every move he made was scrutinized by pundits, politicians, and even the general public. The stakes had never been higher. Despite the growing criticism, Elon remained steadfast. He had a mission to accomplish, and he couldn't afford to be swayed by detractors. But even he couldn't ignore the undeniable fact: the battle for control over the future of space exploration had begun. And while public support was on the rise, the opposition was becoming more organized and vocal. One morning, as Elon was sipping his coffee and reading through a particularly scathing editorial, he received an unexpected call. It was from President Julia Hammond of the United States, a leader whose position on space exploration had been uncertain in the past. "Elon, it's time we talked," President Hammond's voice crackled through the phone. "I'm not sure we're on the same page here." Elon sat up straight. "What do you mean?" "The Mars mission," she began, her tone cautious but firm. "It's big, I get that. But we're seeing a lot of pressure from lawmakers, and we need to figure out where this is all heading. I have to look out for the best interests of the American people, and right now, it feels like we're heading into uncharted territory without a clear map." Elon's heart began to race, but he kept his voice calm. "I understand the concerns, Madam President. But we are talking about the future of humanity. If we don't act now, we risk losing out on the opportunity to shape the next phase of our civilization. Mars isn't just a mission, it's a necessity." There was a long pause before the president responded. "I agree, but the public is divided. Some people think this mission is a waste of resources. Others are fearful of the risks involved. And then there's the issue of how we govern space exploration. Do we let private companies like yours take the lead, or do we establish international oversight to ensure the safety and fairness of these endeavors?" Elon took a deep breath. The reality is that governments alone haven't moved fast enough to make this happen. SpaceX is making progress that could change the entire trajectory of human existence. We have the technology, the vision, and the will to make this work. But if we're waiting for bureaucratic approval to push this forward, we might be waiting forever. President Hammond's voice softened. "I'm not trying to hold you back, Elon. But I'm concerned about the precedent this could set. What happens if you're successful? What happens when other private companies want to jump in and start running their own space programs? It's a delicate balance, and we have to get it right." Elon paused, reflecting on her words. He knew this was bigger than just SpaceX. This was about the future of space exploration as a whole, and if he wanted to succeed, he would need more than just public support. He would need the backing of governments, international cooperation, and clear regulations to ensure that the next steps were sustainable and responsible. "I hear you, Madam President," Elon said, his voice steady. "But I believe the solution isn't to slow down progress. It's to create a framework that allows innovation to thrive while ensuring safety and accountability. I'm not asking for free rein. I'm asking for a chance to build something that will benefit all of humanity." The president was quiet for a moment, considering his words. "I'll give you this, you're passionate and you're not backing down. But this isn't just about passion, Elon. It's about responsibility. Let's sit down soon and discuss how we can ensure that this mission is in the best interest of everyone involved." Elon knew that this was a crucial turning point. The conversation with President Hammond signaled that the path to Mars was going to be more complicated than he had anticipated. He would have to navigate political waters, build alliances, and prove that SpaceX's vision was aligned with the greater good of humanity. But one thing was certain: he wasn't going to let anyone derail the mission. The clock was ticking, and every day counted. In the following weeks, the pressure on Elon only intensified. Public debates about the role of private companies in space exploration became a hot topic, with experts, lawmakers, and industry leaders weighing in. There were some who supported Elon's vision, arguing that the future of space exploration belonged to innovators like him. But there were others who insisted that space exploration should remain under the control of national governments or international coalitions, with private companies serving only as partners. To add fuel to the fire, a major scandal broke within the aerospace community. A competing company, Orbital Dynamics, had suffered a catastrophic failure during one of their test flights, resulting in the loss of a valuable satellite and the potential for environmental damage. The accident prompted questions about the safety of private companies operating without sufficient oversight. Critics of Elon's Mars mission seized on the incident, arguing that SpaceX could be heading down the same dangerous path. Elon found himself under attack from all sides. The media was relentless, questioning his ability to manage the enormous risks involved in sending humans to Mars. Even some of his own supporters began to waver, unsure if SpaceX was truly ready to handle the monumental challenges that lay ahead. But Elon refused to back down. He knew that every successful venture in history had faced moments of doubt and criticism. The key was to remain focused and push forward. He called a meeting with his senior leadership team at SpaceX, determined to find a way to keep the momentum going. "We can't let this stop us," he said, standing at the head of the table. "There's too much at stake. We need to show the world that SpaceX is serious about this mission, and we're ready to handle the challenges. It's time to double down on our commitment." The team responded with a renewed sense of determination. They discussed strategies for improving safety measures, building stronger partnerships with other organizations, and increasing transparency to rebuild trust. They also decided to ramp up their public outreach efforts, focusing on the long-term benefits of space exploration and emphasizing the importance of the Mars mission for future generations. As the weeks went by, the pressure didn't let up. But with each setback, Elon grew more resolute. He knew that the path to Mars was going to be fraught with obstacles. But if there was one thing he had learned throughout his career, it was that obstacles were simply opportunities to innovate, to improve, and to prove the doubters wrong. And so, with the world watching, Elon Musk and SpaceX pressed forward. The battle for control of humanity's future in space had only just begun, but Elon was ready to fight for it, no matter what it took. As the pressure continued to mount, Elon Musk found himself fighting battles on multiple fronts. The legal challenges, political resistance, and public backlash were relentless. Yet, amidst all the tension and chaos, an unexpected ally emerged. This ally was someone who had once been at odds with Elon's vision and had publicly criticized his approach in the past. But now, they were offering support in a way that could change everything. It was early one morning when Elon received a message that made him pause. The email subject line read, "A proposal for cooperation." Elon's eyebrows furrowed as he opened the message. The sender's name made his heart skip a beat, Jeff Bezos. Elon had never been shy about his disdain for Amazon's founder. Over the years, their rivalry had become a well-known spectacle in the tech world. Bezos, the billionaire mastermind behind Blue Origin, was SpaceX's biggest competitor in the race for space exploration. Their relationship had always been tense, marked by subtle jabs in the media and the occasional public spat. But now, Bezos was reaching out, and the tone of his email was unlike anything Elon had ever expected. Dear Elon, I've been following your Mars mission closely, and while I have had my reservations about your methods in the past, I have come to realize something important. The journey to space is not a competition, it is a shared goal. The future of humanity depends on our collective efforts, not on who gets there first. I believe that, rather than working against each other, we have an opportunity to collaborate. Our resources, combined with your innovative approach, could accelerate our progress exponentially. I am open to discussing how we can work together to make space travel more sustainable and accessible for everyone. Let me know if you're open to a conversation. Sincerely, Jeff Bezos. Elon sat back in his chair, the weight of the message settling in. This wasn't just a simple gesture of support, it was a proposal for a potential game-changing partnership. Elon knew that teaming up with Bezos, the founder of Blue Origin, could give their efforts an unprecedented boost. Together, they could join forces to create a massive space infrastructure, combining their knowledge, resources, and technology. But the question remained, could Elon trust Jeff Bezos? Their rivalry had been built on years of competition and contrasting visions for space. Blue Origin's approach had always been more conservative, with a focus on gradual development and long-term sustainability. SpaceX, on the other hand, had always prided itself on taking risks and pushing boundaries. The two companies had fundamentally different philosophies, and Elon wasn't sure whether the offer was genuine or just another strategic move by Bezos to undermine him. After hours of deliberation, Elon made a decision. He couldn't afford to dismiss an opportunity like this, especially when the stakes were so high. Space exploration needed all the support it could get, and if Bezos was willing to play on the same team, it would be foolish to ignore the potential benefits. He typed a response. Jeff. I appreciate your message, and I agree that our shared goal is the future of humanity. I've always believed that collaboration is key to achieving something great, and I'm open to exploring how we can work together. Let's set up a meeting and discuss the details. Best, Elon Musk. The response was sent, and within hours, a meeting was scheduled. Elon couldn't help but feel a mix of skepticism and curiosity. Was this truly a turning point? Or was it just another attempt by Bezos to steal the spotlight? The day of the meeting arrived, and Elon found himself walking into a high-tech conference room at Blue Origin's headquarters in Kent, Washington. The space was sleek, modern, and impressive, much like the man who had built it. As he stepped into the room, Elon was greeted by Jeff Bezos, who stood to shake his hand with a genuine smile. Good to see you, Elon, Bezos said, his tone friendly yet measured. Elon nodded, his expression unreadable. Thanks for the invitation, Jeff. I didn't expect this. Bezos chuckled. I know we've had our differences, but at the end of the day, we're both in this for the same reason, to get humanity to space. Elon took a seat at the large table, his eyes fixed on Bezos. You're not wrong. But I still wonder why now. After everything that's happened between us, why reach out? Bezos leaned forward, his hands clasped together. Because I've realized something over the years. The world needs more than one player in space. We're entering a new era, and this isn't about winning a race. It's about ensuring that humanity doesn't get left behind. The more we push, the better it is for everyone. Elon studied Bezos for a moment, trying to gauge whether this was a genuine offer or just another move in the game. But there was something in Bezos's tone, something that made Elon believe that this time, it wasn't about winning or losing. This time, it was about something bigger. "I'm listening," Elon said. The two men spent the next few hours discussing the details of a potential collaboration. Bezos proposed that Blue Origin's expertise in reusable rockets could complement SpaceX's advanced propulsion systems and Mars mission goals. They discussed pooling resources for research and development, sharing data, and even working together on building infrastructure for long-term space colonization. Bezos also suggested a joint venture to create a new space station that could serve as a hub for interplanetary travel, a critical stepping stone toward colonizing Mars. The station would act as a base for astronauts, a refueling station for spacecraft, and a research facility for the future of space exploration. It would be a neutral zone, governed by international regulations and open to partnerships with other countries and private companies. Elon was intrigued by the proposal. A combined effort from both SpaceX and Blue Origin could exponentially increase their chances of success. Together, they could accelerate the development of space travel, reduce costs, and make it more accessible to future generations. It was an ambitious plan, but one that had the potential to change everything. "This is a big commitment," Elon said, his voice cautious but hopeful. "It's not just about the technology, it's about the future. We'll need to make sure we have the right people in place to manage this." Bezos nodded. "Absolutely. It's about creating a sustainable, long-term vision. We'll need the best minds in the world to make this happen. But together, we can build something that will last for centuries." Elon thought for a moment. It was a risk, no doubt about it. But then again, everything about space exploration had always been a risk. And if they could work together, the payoff could be immeasurable. "I'm in," Elon finally said. "Let's make it happen." And just like that, the unlikeliest of alliances was born. The two men, once bitter rivals, now stood side by side, united in their shared vision for humanity's future in space. As Elon left the meeting, his mind raced with possibilities. This was the breakthrough he needed. With Blue Origin by his side, SpaceX's mission to Mars was now one step closer to reality. The battle for control over the future of space exploration was far from over, but with Bezos as an ally, Elon Musk felt more confident than ever that humanity's journey to the stars was within reach. As the alliance between SpaceX and Blue Origin became the subject of media frenzy, Elon Musk found himself in an unusual position, no longer as the sole leader of the charge toward Mars, but as part of a larger team. The public was enthralled by the idea of two tech giants putting their differences aside for the greater good. But beneath the surface, things were far from simple. And Elon knew this all too well. Despite the promising collaboration, cracks in the partnership began to form almost immediately. There were differences in how the two companies operated. While SpaceX thrived on its fast-paced, risk-taking approach, Blue Origin's methodical, calculated strategy was more cautious and slow-moving. The tension between these two philosophies began to show as the teams started working together. One day, Elon was sitting in his office at SpaceX headquarters, reviewing some critical reports when his phone rang. It was a number he didn't recognize. "Elon," the voice on the other end said, "this is James from the board of directors at SpaceX. We need to talk." Elon frowned, his mind immediately racing to the possibilities. The board had always been supportive of his vision, but this sudden call felt off. "What's going on, James?" "There's something you need to know about Blue Origin's recent dealings," James said, his tone serious. "We've been getting some unsettling reports about their internal processes. We think there's something they're not telling us." Elon's heart skipped a beat. He had trusted Bezos, or at least believed in the idea of their partnership. The thought that Blue Origin might be hiding something from SpaceX was troubling, to say the least. "What kind of reports?" Elon asked, his voice growing more alert. "It's not just one thing, Elon," James continued. "It's a series of red flags. Internal documents, financial discrepancies, some concerning communications with government officials. We don't have all the details yet, but there are enough questions for us to start looking into it. Elon sat back in his chair, processing what he had just heard. This was a bombshell. If there was any truth to the allegations, it could derail everything they had worked for, the partnership, the mission to Mars, the entire vision of humanity's future in space. I need everything you have on this, Elon said, his voice sharp. And I want to know who is behind it. James hesitated for a moment. I'll send you everything, but be careful, Elon. If this goes public, it could do more than just damage the partnership, it could bring down both companies. The line went silent for a moment before Elon spoke again. I appreciate the heads up, James. Let's get to the bottom of this. Elon spent the rest of the day poring over the documents James had sent. The deeper he dug, the more disturbing the findings became. There were internal memos from Blue Origin's leadership suggesting that some of their technological advancements had been overstated, particularly when it came to reusable rockets. Some of the projections about their Mars capability appeared to be based on incomplete or manipulated data. And then, there were the emails, correspondence between Blue Origin executives and various government agencies, hinting at secret dealings that could have serious legal ramifications. Elon's stomach tightened as he realized what this meant. Blue Origin had been less transparent than he had ever imagined, and it was possible that Bezos himself had been involved in some of the more questionable activities. The following day, Elon arranged a private meeting with his senior leadership team. They discussed the findings in detail, and the decision was unanimous: they needed to confront Bezos and his team directly. The confrontation happened swiftly. Elon arrived at Blue Origin's headquarters with a small team of trusted advisors. When he stepped into the building, he was greeted by Jeff Bezos, who seemed completely unaware of the storm that was about to unfold. Elon, good to see you, Bezos said with a smile, extending his hand. Elon didn't shake his hand. Instead, he walked straight to the conference table, his gaze fixed on Bezos. We need to talk. Bezos's smile faltered, but he gestured for Elon to sit down. Of course. What's on your mind? Elon wasted no time. We found discrepancies in Blue Origin's operations, financial inconsistencies, internal data manipulation, and communications with government agencies that don't add up. Bezos's expression hardened, but he quickly regained his composure. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the truth, Jeff, Elon replied. I want to know what's going on. I've seen the documents, and they raise some serious questions. Bezos took a deep breath. For a moment, it looked like he might deny everything, but then he leaned back in his chair and exhaled slowly. You have no idea what you're dealing with, Elon. This isn't just about some small discrepancies. There are bigger forces at play. Elon's mind raced. What do you mean? I'm not the only one in charge of Blue Origin, Bezos said, his tone suddenly serious. There are powerful people behind the scenes, people who have a vested interest in making sure we don't succeed. There are political interests, corporate interests, and even international players who are trying to control space exploration. You're not the only one with big plans for Mars, Elon. But you might be playing a dangerous game. Elon was stunned. So you're telling me this is all part of some larger conspiracy? Bezos nodded. I never wanted this to happen. I thought we could push forward without interference, but it's bigger than both of us. There are people who don't want us to succeed, not because of what's best for humanity, but because of what's best for their own power and control. The words hit Elon like a ton of bricks. He had known that space exploration would never be easy, but the idea that powerful forces were actively working against them, trying to manipulate the trajectory of human advancement, it was something he hadn't fully grasped until now. What do we do now? Elon asked, his voice low, almost uncertain for the first time in years. Bezos's eyes darkened. We don't have many options left. But we can't back down. The only way forward is to expose them, to take the fight to those who are trying to pull the strings behind the scenes. We have to unite every player in the space industry, and we have to make it clear that space exploration isn't something that can be controlled by a handful of powerful people. It's bigger than that. Elon nodded slowly, his mind already working on the next steps. It was no longer just about Mars, it was about something far more significant. It was about ensuring that space exploration remained free from corruption and corporate control. For the first time in a long while, Elon felt a renewed sense of purpose. The fight was far from over, and it was about to get much, much bigger. But he knew that he wasn't alone. Bezos, despite the hidden agendas and complexities, had become an ally once again. And together, they would go up against the forces that sought to control humanity's future in space. They were just getting started. As the days passed, Elon Musk couldn't shake the weight of the revelation he had learned from Bezos. The stakes had suddenly become much higher than he had ever anticipated. What started as a rivalry between two tech giants, SpaceX and Blue Origin, had now turned into something much more complex. There were far larger, more powerful forces at work, and these forces were determined to control space exploration for their own gain. Elon sat in his office late at night, staring at the holographic map of Mars and its surrounding moons. The future of human civilization depended on what they did next. They weren't just fighting for a spot on the red planet anymore. They were fighting for humanity's future in the stars. But who were they truly fighting against? Was it each other, or was it something far more sinister? Elon's thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. "Come in," he called. A member of his senior leadership team, Sarah, entered the room. She was a brilliant strategist and one of Elon's most trusted advisors. "Elon, we've got a problem," Sarah said, her voice tense. "The documents you received, they're just the tip of the iceberg. We've traced some of the communications and financial activities back to some very high-level people. People with power and influence beyond anything we could have imagined." Elon felt his stomach tighten. "Who?" "I can't say for sure yet, but I have a list of potential players who might be involved," Sarah replied, pulling up a document on her tablet. She passed it to Elon, who quickly scanned the names. Among them were corporate CEOs, government officials, and even military contractors. People who, on the surface, seemed to have no reason to interfere with private space companies. But there they were, their names tied to suspicious activities, shell companies, off-the-books accounts, and covert meetings with foreign powers. It was a tangled web of corruption and greed. "This is bigger than we thought," Elon said, his voice low. "We need to expose this. We need to take action before it's too late." Sarah nodded. "I agree. But we can't do it alone. If we're going to fight this, we need allies, real, powerful allies." Elon knew she was right. If they were going to take on the people behind the scenes, they would need to rally the entire space industry. It couldn't just be SpaceX and Blue Origin, it had to be every company, every country, every organization that believed in the freedom of space. "I'll call Bezos," Elon said, already pulling out his phone. He dialed the number, his finger hovering over the screen as the phone rang. When Bezos answered, Elon didn't waste time with pleasantries. "We need to go public with this," Elon said. "It's bigger than our companies now. We have to expose the corruption and the people behind it." Bezos's voice was steady but filled with the same urgency that Elon felt. "I agree. But we can't just drop a bombshell without being prepared. If we go public with this, they'll retaliate. They'll do whatever it takes to silence us." "I know," Elon replied. "But we don't have a choice. If we don't act now, they'll tighten their grip on space exploration. We'll lose everything." The line went silent for a moment as Bezos processed the gravity of the situation. Finally, he spoke. "All right. Let's do it. But we need to move fast. I'll start reaching out to some of the other players in the industry. We'll need a united front if we're going to take on these people. Elon felt a surge of hope. Despite the odds stacked against them, this was their moment. They couldn't back down now. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, meetings, and strategic planning. Elon, Bezos, and their teams worked tirelessly, gathering evidence, reaching out to allies, and preparing their message. It was clear that the conspiracy they were uncovering ran deep, but they had to be careful. Any misstep could destroy everything they had worked for. The world wasn't ready for the truth, and they had to be prepared for the backlash. On the morning of the big reveal, Elon stood in front of a camera, flanked by Bezos and several other key figures in the space industry. The press conference was scheduled to go live in just a few hours. The room was filled with tension, and Elon could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. "This is it," Sarah said, standing beside him. "We're about to turn the tide." Elon nodded, his mind focused. "Let's do this." The camera rolled, and Elon stepped forward to address the world. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice steady but resolute. "What we are about to share with you is the result of months of investigation, collaboration, and hard work. For years, SpaceX and Blue Origin have been at the forefront of space exploration, working to bring humanity to new frontiers. But as we've gone deeper into this mission, we've uncovered something that threatens to undo all the progress we've made." Bezos stepped forward next, his expression grim. "There are powerful individuals and organizations that have been manipulating the course of space exploration. They've been working behind the scenes to control the future of humanity in space for their own profit and power. And we have the evidence to prove it." Elon could feel the weight of the truth settling on his shoulders. He wasn't just revealing corruption, he was exposing a system that had been in place for decades, a system that had kept humanity from reaching its full potential in space. But this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a fight for the future. "We're not backing down," Elon continued. "We won't allow these forces to control the future of space. Space belongs to all of us, not to the few. We're calling on every company, every nation, every person who believes in the freedom of space to join us. It's time to take back control." The press conference lasted for over an hour as Elon and Bezos presented the evidence they had gathered, documents, emails, and financial records that painted a damning picture of the conspiracy. The media erupted in shock, and within hours, the story was all over the news. The world was watching, and there was no turning back. As the press conference came to a close, Elon felt a sense of determination rise within him. The fight for the future of space was just beginning. But one thing was clear, he wasn't alone. With Bezos by his side, and with the support of a growing alliance, they would face whatever came their way. The war for space had begun, and Elon Musk wasn't about to lose. The aftermath of the press conference was nothing short of explosive. Within hours, social media was flooded with reactions, both supportive and critical. News outlets covered every angle of the story, questioning the legitimacy of the claims, while others decried the potential consequences. Some people rallied behind Elon and Bezos, praising them for their transparency and bravery in exposing corruption, while others began to question whether their actions were simply a power grab in the competitive space industry. But amidst all the noise, one thing was clear: the world had taken notice. Elon sat in his office the morning after the press conference, his gaze fixed on the holographic display in front of him. Space exploration, the very thing he had devoted his life to, was now caught in a battle not just against corporate corruption but also against shadowy figures whose names had never surfaced in the public eye. His mind raced, trying to piece together the hidden forces that were maneuvering behind the scenes. His thoughts were interrupted when Sarah walked in with a concerned look on her face. "Elon," she said quietly, "we've got a problem. The situation is escalating faster than we anticipated." Elon frowned. "What do you mean?" Sarah handed him a tablet, and Elon's eyes scanned the screen. The message was clear: Several high-profile players in the tech and defense sectors were now speaking out against SpaceX and Blue Origin's revelations. CEOs from rival companies were issuing statements, publicly criticizing Elon's and Bezos's actions. But it wasn't just their words that raised alarm, it was the coordinated nature of the response. "This feels organized," Elon muttered, running his fingers through his hair. "Someone is pulling strings from behind the scenes." Sarah nodded. "That's what we think. We've been digging into the connections between these individuals. And it looks like we're dealing with something much bigger than we thought. There's a hidden hand controlling things." Elon's gut twisted. He had always known that space exploration was a competitive field, but this was different. It wasn't just about rivalry, it was about power. Powerful figures who had entrenched themselves in the system, using their influence to shape the future of space for their own benefit. "We need to find out who's behind this," Elon said, determination creeping into his voice. "We've exposed the corruption, but now we need to expose the puppet masters." Sarah gave him a nod of agreement. "I'll get the team on it. But it's going to take time to track down the connections." Elon turned back to the holographic map of Mars, his mind now racing in a different direction. The mission to Mars had always been about more than just reaching the planet. It had been about establishing humanity's future in space, free from the shackles of earthbound power structures. But if the conspiracy they had uncovered ran as deep as it seemed, their mission was at risk of being hijacked. Days turned into weeks as Elon and his team dug deeper into the network of individuals and organizations tied to the corruption in space. They tracked financial transactions, uncovered shell companies, and sifted through mountains of data. But despite their best efforts, the true masterminds behind the conspiracy remained elusive. One evening, after hours of research, Sarah came to Elon with a breakthrough. "Elon, I think we've got something," she said, her voice tense with excitement. "I found a series of encrypted messages that seem to point to a group of private investors. These investors have ties to some of the biggest defense contractors in the world." Elon's heart raced as Sarah pulled up the decrypted messages on her tablet. The names and companies listed were familiar, military-industrial giants with enormous resources and influence. These were the kinds of organizations that could control the flow of information, manipulate government policy, and secure contracts for space exploration without ever stepping into the public spotlight. "There it is," Elon said, his voice low and filled with realization. "These people don't just want to control space, they want to control everything. They want to ensure that only a select few have the power to determine humanity's future in space." Sarah nodded grimly. "They've been manipulating the space industry from the shadows for years. They use their connections with governments, military, and corporations to steer the direction of space exploration." "But why now?" Elon asked, pacing around the room. "Why would they try to shut us down now, when we're closer than ever to achieving our goals?" "I think it's because we're threatening the status quo," Sarah said. "SpaceX and Blue Origin are pushing for a future where space is democratized, where private companies, not just governments, have the power to shape the future. These investors can't afford that. They're afraid of losing their grip on the space economy." Elon's mind was spinning. This was it, the fight he had been preparing for his entire life. It wasn't just about technology or innovation anymore. It was about breaking free from the chains of powerful elites who wanted to keep humanity confined to Earth. "We need to take them head on," Elon said, his voice resolute. "We're not going to let them control the future of space." The next phase of the plan was dangerous. Elon, Bezos, and their team knew that exposing these shadowy figures would come with risks, far more significant than anything they had faced before. But they couldn't back down. They had already gone too far to stop now. Elon gathered his leadership team once again, this time in a secure location, away from prying eyes. It was time to take the fight to the next level. "We're going to need to create an alliance," Elon said, standing in front of the group. "We've got the evidence. But we can't do this alone. We need to bring in other companies, governments, and organizations that believe in the future we're trying to create. Bezos, standing next to him, nodded. We've reached out to a few key players already. But this is going to take a unified front. We need to make it clear that we're not just fighting for our companies, we're fighting for the future of humanity in space. Elon's eyes burned with intensity. Exactly. This is bigger than any one company. This is about making sure that space belongs to everyone, not just a powerful few. With a plan in place, the next step was to begin forming the alliance. They would need to convince not only other tech companies and space organizations but also the global community to stand with them. The fight was about to get even more intense, and Elon knew that this time, it wasn't just about beating the competition, it was about ensuring the future of space for generations to come. The stage was set. The war for space was no longer just a battle between companies, it had become a global struggle for freedom, innovation, and the destiny of humanity. And Elon Musk was ready to lead the charge. As the alliance began to take shape, Elon felt a growing sense of urgency. Every decision he made, every step he took, carried the weight of not just his company or his career, but the future of humanity's existence beyond Earth. The world had never been this close to a technological breakthrough, never been this close to breaking free from the control of the established powers. But with that breakthrough came new threats. The forces trying to control space had no intention of stepping aside quietly. They would fight tooth and nail to retain their grip, and Elon knew the battle wouldn't just be fought with rockets and satellites. It would be fought with influence, money, and even misinformation. Elon had always prided himself on his ability to innovate and move fast, but now, in this fight, he was learning just how much power the old guard still held over the game. It wasn't enough to have the best technology or the brightest minds. You had to be prepared for war in all its forms. In the weeks that followed, the alliance Elon and Bezos had formed grew stronger. They reached out to like-minded organizations across the globe, securing partnerships with private companies, governmental agencies, and even space agencies from countries outside the US. The goal was simple: unite the brightest minds and most powerful resources to fight back against those who sought to control the future of space. But despite the growing support, there was a persistent undercurrent of fear. The shadowy group behind the conspiracy wasn't just operating in the public eye, it had deep roots in political circles, powerful media outlets, and corporate boardrooms. Their ability to manipulate events and control narratives was staggering. And now, they were pushing back against the rising tide of opposition. One evening, as Elon sat with Sarah in the command center of SpaceX, his phone buzzed with an incoming message. It was from an anonymous source. "They know you're coming for them. They're not going to sit back and let you expose them. Watch your back." The message was brief, but it was enough to make Elon's stomach drop. Someone within the network of corruption was aware of their plan, and they were warning him. "This is getting out of hand," Elon muttered, showing Sarah the message. She frowned, her fingers tapping on the table as she processed the information. "We knew it wasn't going to be easy, but now we've got confirmation. Whoever's behind this, they're watching us. They know what we're up to." Elon stood up, pacing. "We can't stop now. If they know, it means we're getting close to exposing them. This is exactly what we need." Sarah didn't look convinced. "You're right about that, but we need to be careful. They have resources we don't. They can make things happen behind the scenes, and we're not the only ones they're targeting." Elon thought for a moment, his mind racing. He knew that their efforts would lead them into increasingly dangerous territory. The stakes had shifted, this wasn't just a fight for control over space anymore. It was a fight for survival. If they couldn't pull the world together, if they couldn't expose the shadowy forces manipulating events, their entire mission, everything they had worked for, could be wiped away in an instant. "I know," Elon said, his voice firm. "But if we back down now, we've already lost. We can't let them win. We have to keep pushing." The pressure began to mount as the weeks passed. Elon and Bezos were speaking with heads of state, CEOs, and key stakeholders in the space industry. Every conversation was high stakes. The more they learned about the secretive group, the more dangerous their actions seemed. It wasn't just about financial control anymore, it was about keeping humanity from breaking free of Earth's orbit, from unlocking the true potential of space. Their latest intelligence pointed to a series of secret meetings held by high-ranking government officials and executives from major defense contractors. These meetings had been arranged under the guise of international cooperation, but Elon and his team suspected they were nothing more than elaborate cover-ups. One evening, Elon was reviewing a set of documents when he received a call from Bezos. The urgency in his voice was palpable. "Elon, I've got some intel," Bezos said. "We've traced some of these secret meetings to a series of backdoor deals that involve the government. And there's a key player at the center of it all, someone we didn't expect." "Who?" Elon asked, his pulse quickening. "Do you remember John Matthews? The former head of NASA?" Bezos asked. "He's been meeting with the defense contractors and foreign powers. And we think he's the one pulling a lot of strings behind the scenes." Elon felt a chill run down his spine. John Matthews had once been a prominent figure in the space industry, respected for his leadership at NASA. But now, his involvement in this web of corruption changed everything. Matthews knew the ins and outs of government space policy, the global power structures, and how to manipulate the system. "Elon, we need to move fast," Bezos urged. "If Matthews is the key, we need to expose him before he has the chance to consolidate his power." The following days were a blur of activity. Elon and Bezos's teams worked around the clock to gather evidence on Matthews. They needed to be absolutely sure before making any moves. The last thing they wanted was to jump the gun and risk alienating potential allies or, worse, falling right into the hands of the enemy. They found their breakthrough when a source within Matthews's inner circle leaked a series of confidential emails that confirmed his ties to the covert meetings. The emails contained references to large sums of money funneled through shell companies and contacts with foreign governments. The pieces of the puzzle were finally coming together. "We've got him," Elon said, his voice cold with determination. "Now we just need to make this public." But as they prepared to release the information, something unexpected happened. Elon received another message, this time, from an unknown number. "If you go public with this, we'll destroy everything you've built. SpaceX. Blue Origin. Your entire legacy. Consider this a warning." The message was clear. Elon's every move was being watched, and the people behind this conspiracy were ready to do whatever it took to protect their interests. This was no longer just about space. This was a war for the very future of humanity, and Elon Musk was caught in the center of it all. But there was no turning back. The storm was coming, and he wasn't about to let it destroy everything he had fought for. The time for waiting was over. It was time to strike. The following days felt like a siege. Elon, Sarah, Bezos, and their teams were working tirelessly to prepare the final blow. They had the evidence, the information, the plan. They were on the verge of exposing John Matthews for what he truly was, the puppet master pulling the strings behind the scenes of the space industry's largest corruption scandal. But every move they made was met with resistance. Every step forward seemed to trigger a new wave of counterattacks. The higher-ups in government and the military-industrial complex were beginning to see the writing on the wall. Elon's efforts to expose them had gone too far, and they were now throwing everything they could at him to stop him. Sarah paced back and forth in Elon's office, her brow furrowed. "Elon, we can't keep waiting. We've had to push back the exposé twice now, and they're getting bolder. They're planting stories in the press about us. The public's starting to turn against us." Elon stood at the window, his mind racing. The public backlash had been swift and intense. News outlets had turned on him, questioning his motives, his alliances, his very integrity. The smear campaign had already begun, and it was evident that the shadowy forces working against him were using every weapon at their disposal. "I know," Elon said, his voice tight. "But if we release this without enough support, we'll lose everything. This has to be perfect. We have to have the right allies on our side, the right evidence. I won't let them spin this to make us the villains." Sarah exhaled, her frustration apparent. "We're running out of time, Elon. The longer we wait, the stronger their hold becomes. We need to expose Matthews now, or they'll destroy us from the inside out." Elon nodded grimly. "You're right. We've waited long enough. It's time." The night they decided to go public with the exposé felt like a turning point. Elon knew that once the information was out, there would be no going back. The media would be on him, the government would be after him, and the people who had been pulling the strings for so long would fight to protect their empire. But Elon also knew that this was the only way forward. He couldn't let Matthews, or anyone else like him, control the future of space exploration. The truth had to come out, no matter the cost. The plan was simple. Elon, Bezos, and a small group of trusted allies would hold a live-streamed press conference, unveiling the full extent of Matthews's involvement in the covert meetings and the corrupt practices he had orchestrated. They would release the evidence, emails, financial transactions, and confidential documents, detailing the deals Matthews had made with foreign governments and defense contractors. It was a direct assault on the powerful elite that had long controlled the space industry. As the press conference began, Elon felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. This wasn't just another business announcement. This was a battle for the future of humanity. The camera clicked on, and Elon stood at the podium, flanked by Jeff Bezos and Sarah. His voice was calm, but beneath it, there was a steely determination. "Good evening," Elon began, his eyes scanning the audience of reporters and live-stream viewers. "Today, we bring you a story that is far bigger than the success or failure of any company, far bigger than the ambitions of any individual. This is a story about the future of space, and the people who have been manipulating that future for their own gain." He paused for a moment, allowing the weight of his words to settle. The room was silent. "We have uncovered a web of corruption that has reached the highest levels of government, industry, and military power. A group of powerful individuals, led by former NASA Administrator John Matthews, has been secretly controlling space policy, manipulating contracts, and ensuring that the future of space is shaped by only a select few." The room erupted into a flurry of questions, but Elon held up his hand for silence. "We've gathered irrefutable evidence of these actions," he continued. "Emails, financial transactions, and direct communications between Matthews and several defense contractors and foreign governments. These dealings have been kept hidden from the public, but today, the truth is finally coming to light." Elon gestured to a large screen behind him, which flickered to life, displaying the documents and emails they had gathered over the past few months. The audience gasped as the details began to unfold on the screen: proof of millions of dollars in bribes, covert meetings with foreign leaders, and shadowy backroom deals designed to ensure that the space industry remained under the control of a select few. As the presentation continued, Elon's eyes remained steady, his voice unwavering. The revelations were shocking, and the public's response was swift and explosive. News outlets began to pick up the story, and within minutes, social media exploded with reactions. People were stunned, outraged, and demanding answers. But there was one thing Elon hadn't anticipated: the sheer power of the opposition. As soon as the exposé hit the public, Matthews's allies went into overdrive. Counterattacks were launched, and within hours, a coordinated media campaign began to discredit the revelations. They called Elon and Bezos liars, accusing them of trying to destroy the space industry for their own gain. They even tried to silence the whistleblowers who had provided the evidence, using threats and intimidation to discredit them. It was clear that Matthews's influence was vast, and his network would stop at nothing to protect their secrets. But despite the intense backlash, the public's outrage continued to grow. People were beginning to question everything. How had they allowed these hidden forces to control the future of space for so long? Were they really willing to let these corrupt individuals decide humanity's destiny? The war for space had officially begun. Later that evening, as the storm of media reactions continued to swirl around him, Elon sat in his office, staring out at the stars. The weight of the moment was beginning to sink in. He had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. There was no going back from this. But in his heart, Elon knew one thing for certain: he couldn't stop now. The fight for the future of space wasn't just about winning, it was about creating something that would last for generations to come. The battle had only just begun. And Elon Musk was ready for whatever came next. The fallout from the exposé was immediate and intense. What had been intended as a bold, irreversible move to reveal the corruption within the space industry quickly escalated into a firestorm of media attacks, public outcry, and corporate sabotage. Elon knew that he had stirred a hornet's nest, but the venomous backlash was beyond anything he could have imagined. The media, previously allies in the race to explore space, now turned against him. Headlines screamed of Musk's mad power play and Bezos and Musk's desperate scheme to destroy NASA. The headlines painted the two tech moguls as reckless, self-serving billionaires who were willing to tear down the space industry just to further their own ambitions. Public opinion, once supportive of Elon's vision for space, was split down the middle. Some rallied to his side, embracing the notion of exposing corruption and taking down the entrenched powers, while others, swept up by the media frenzy, began to question the validity of his motives. Across social media, hashtags like #MuskLies and #MuskExposed trended worldwide. The narrative of corruption and greed began to overshadow the revelations of Matthews's ties to shady foreign governments and defense contractors. Those who had the most to lose from the exposé began to mobilize, using their power to bury the story or shift public focus away from the real issue. But the greatest surprise came from inside their own ranks. One by one, the allies Elon had counted on started to pull back. Executives at SpaceX began to resign, publicly stating that the company's future was too uncertain to continue under Elon's leadership. Even trusted engineers and scientists began to distance themselves from the project, citing the public relations nightmare that had emerged from the exposé. The weight of the corporate pushback was relentless. It was clear that they were under attack, not just from outside forces but from within as well. Elon sat in his office late one night, staring at the flood of angry messages and statements. His phone had been buzzing non-stop, and the room felt suffocating. Sarah had stayed at his side, helping him navigate the whirlwind, but even she seemed tired, her usual optimism fading under the constant pressure. "Are you okay?" Sarah asked, her voice soft as she stood by his desk. Elon looked up at her, his eyes weary but resolute. "I'm fine. It's just, a lot. This is what I signed up for, right? No one ever said this was going to be easy." Sarah sighed. "It's not just about you, Elon. It's the people you've surrounded yourself with. Everyone's jumping ship. Some of them have been with SpaceX since the beginning. They're scared. They think this is too risky." "I don't have the luxury of worrying about what people think right now," Elon replied, his voice firm. "We have to expose the truth. If we let them silence us now, everything we've worked for will be for nothing." Sarah hesitated. "But at what cost? The pressure is suffocating. They're coming after you from every angle. Matthews has resources we can't even fathom. He's connected in ways we haven't even touched." Elon's expression softened for a moment. He had always known the risk of fighting a battle this big, but now the full weight of it was starting to sink in. If they failed, if Matthews's corrupt system held strong, the future of space exploration would be forever tainted. "We've come too far to back down now," Elon said, his voice steady. "But we need to play it smart. This isn't just about exposing the truth, it's about making sure we have the power to follow through. If we don't have the resources or the support, the story will die with us. The next few weeks were a blur of strategy, panic, and trying to rebuild their position. Elon and his team scrambled to counter the backlash. They reached out to their remaining allies, those who hadn't turned on them yet. They were able to secure some key figures in the space industry, tech, and politics to help carry the story forward, but it was clear that Matthews had a far-reaching network of influence that had begun to outflank them at every turn. The media attacks continued to intensify. Matthews's camp flooded the airwaves with reports questioning the integrity of the exposé, claiming that the evidence was fabricated or taken out of context. Journalists who had previously supported Elon now openly questioned his credibility. Corporate allies that had previously been on the edge of joining the fight now backed off, hesitant to risk their own reputations. It wasn't just Elon's personal reputation that was on the line anymore, it was SpaceX, the entire foundation of the new space economy. Would humanity's first steps toward a multiplanetary future be crushed by the weight of corruption? And then, just when things seemed to be at their worst, an unexpected ally emerged. It was a quiet afternoon when Elon received a call from an unlisted number. The voice on the other end was familiar but unexpected, John Matthews himself. "Musk," Matthews said with a voice that was as smooth as it was menacing, "you're causing quite the stir. You should have known better than to try and disrupt the system." Elon sat up straighter, his mind working overtime. This wasn't just a casual threat, it was a direct challenge. "You've made a lot of enemies, Matthews. And you're about to make more. I won't stop until this corruption is exposed." A chuckle echoed through the phone line. "Exposed? You've already lost, Elon. You're too far in now. The media has turned. Your own people are abandoning you. What makes you think you can win this fight?" "I've fought battles before," Elon said, his voice tight with resolve. "And I've won. I'll do whatever it takes to make sure this isn't the end of the story. People will know the truth. You can't bury that forever." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "We'll see about that," Matthews said finally, before the line went dead. That was when it hit him. Matthews wasn't just trying to take him down, he was trying to crush him completely. Elon could sense that his opponent was tightening the noose, and soon the walls would close in on him. But this wasn't over, not by a long shot. The battle for space was far from over, and Elon knew he had to dig deeper than ever before. It was time to go beyond the surface, to expose not just Matthews, but the entire corrupt system that had been pulling the strings for far too long. The war for the future was about to enter a new phase. The next phase of the war was unfolding in a way that felt almost cinematic. Elon had always prided himself on his ability to think ahead, to be one step ahead of everyone else. But as Matthews ramped up his campaign to discredit them, the stakes were higher than ever. It was becoming clear that the power dynamics were shifting, and if Elon didn't act soon, he would lose everything: SpaceX, Tesla, even his very reputation. With every piece of evidence that Elon and his team had painstakingly gathered, Matthews was working tirelessly to disprove it, to twist it, and to bury it in a fog of misinformation. For a moment, Elon felt like he was being engulfed by the sheer scale of the battle. The media, the political pushback, and the disloyalty from within his own ranks, he was on the edge. But Elon Musk had never been one to give up in the face of adversity. "We have one last shot," Elon said, breaking the silence that had settled over the war room. He was sitting at a table surrounded by Sarah, Jeff Bezos, and a few of the last remaining members of his core team. The atmosphere was tense, their faces reflecting the seriousness of the situation. "This has to be a game changer." Sarah leaned forward. "What are you thinking?" "We've tried everything, Elon. Matthews has more power than we realized. He's got too many people on his side. He's even infiltrating government agencies to suppress the truth." Elon's eyes narrowed as he stood up, walking slowly across the room. He needed to make them understand that this wasn't the time to back down. What Matthews doesn't know is that we've been thinking the same way he does. We've been playing defense for too long. Now, it's time to take the fight to him. The room fell silent. Even Jeff, who had been cautiously watching Elon's every move, seemed intrigued by the intensity of his words. "I've got a plan," Elon continued. "We're going to expose Matthews in a way he never saw coming. It's time to go after his financial empire, the very thing that's been funding his schemes for years." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "You mean, we're going after his money?" "Exactly," Elon said, his voice sharp. "Matthews has been hiding his financial activities in plain sight. We've already uncovered enough to show that he's been funneling billions through shell companies, bribing politicians, and using his influence to manipulate contracts. But here's the kicker, we've also found evidence of where that money's going. His funds are connected to some of the most powerful people in government and defense. If we expose the full extent of his financial dealings, we can dismantle his entire network. And that will bring the whole house of cards down." The room began to buzz with a new energy. This was it. This was the move that could make or break everything. They had the evidence, and now, they had to use it. In the coming days, Elon's team worked around the clock, poring over the financial documents they had obtained from their sources. It wasn't just about publishing a story anymore, this was a tactical strike. Elon knew they had to time the release perfectly, one misstep, and Matthews could discredit them once again. The plan was simple, but incredibly risky. They would release the full details of Matthews's financial empire through a massive data dump, making the information publicly available for anyone to see. It would be impossible for Matthews to deny the truth when it was staring everyone in the face. As the day approached, Elon grew more and more focused. There was no turning back now. He had to trust that this would work. If they exposed the full scope of Matthews's financial corruption, the media would have no choice but to cover it. The public would demand answers, and Matthews's powerful allies would be forced to distance themselves from him. The night before the release, Elon sat alone in his office. The city lights of Los Angeles twinkled in the distance, but his mind was miles away, racing ahead to what was about to unfold. He knew that this final gambit could either save everything or destroy it all. But he had made his peace with it. He had always been a man willing to take risks. This was the biggest one of his life. He picked up the phone and called Sarah. "It's time," he said simply. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, her voice cautious. "I have to be," Elon replied. "We've come too far to stop now." At dawn the following day, the world was still asleep when the story broke. The data dump hit every major news outlet and social media platform at once. It was a tidal wave of information, financial records, offshore accounts, bribery contracts, and connections to some of the most powerful players in the world of politics and defense. The documents painted a picture of Matthews as the central figure in a vast criminal enterprise, one that had been manipulating space exploration for decades. Every single detail was meticulously sourced, every claim backed by hard evidence. The world's reaction was instantaneous. Governments scrambled to respond. The media, which had once been hesitant, now had no choice but to confront the reality of what Elon had exposed. The public, once divided, now rallied around the truth. Matthews's allies in the defense industry began to distance themselves, and soon, he was left without the support he had once relied on. The fallout from the exposé was monumental. High-ranking officials were forced to resign, and investigations into the corruption began across multiple countries. Matthews's influence began to crumble, and those who had enabled him for years found themselves caught in the web of scandal. But despite the overwhelming success of the exposé, Elon knew the fight wasn't over. The forces Matthews had unleashed were vast, and they wouldn't stop just because his financial empire had been exposed. Matthews was a man who played for keeps, and his next move was inevitable. As Elon watched the world respond to the release of the evidence, he couldn't help but feel a sense of quiet satisfaction. They had done it. They had shaken the foundation of the space industry to its core. But as the dust began to settle, he knew one thing for sure: Matthews wasn't going down without a fight. Elon Musk had just taken a massive step forward, but the battle for the future of space was far from over. The dust had barely settled from the explosive release of the financial documents when the aftershocks began to ripple through the political and corporate landscapes. Elon had anticipated chaos, but what followed was something far more intense and unpredictable. The space industry was on the edge of a complete overhaul, and with it, the very fabric of global power was shifting. For days, Elon remained holed up in a secure location with his closest allies, Sarah, Jeff Bezos, and a small group of trusted advisors. Every hour brought new developments, new allegations, and even new attacks. Matthews, now publicly exposed as the architect of a massive financial web, wasn't going down without a fight. In fact, it was clear that his retaliation would be swift, merciless, and calculated. Sarah, pacing the room, looked at Elon with concern. "We've won a major battle, but this isn't over. Matthews has resources we can't even comprehend. He won't go down quietly." "I know," Elon replied, his eyes fixed on the screen in front of him, watching as breaking news reports painted Matthews's empire as a network of global corruption. The world was watching, but Elon could feel the storm on the horizon. "But now, we have to stay ahead of him. If we let him regain any ground, everything we've done will be for nothing." Jeff, who had remained mostly quiet during the intense media frenzy, finally spoke up. "We've made enemies on both sides of this war. Matthews has his backers, some of the most powerful players in the game. We've exposed his financial dealings, but he still controls a vast amount of influence. It won't be easy to topple him completely." Elon leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled in thought. He understood the magnitude of the challenge ahead. But something had changed in him after the release of the data dump. He wasn't just fighting to protect SpaceX or his reputation anymore, he was fighting for the future of space exploration itself. The fight had taken on a new, personal dimension. "We need to hit him where it hurts the most," Elon said, his voice steady and determined. "It's not enough to expose his wealth or his connections. We need to dismantle the network that's been propping him up. We have to go after his allies, his influence, and most importantly, his ability to control the narrative." As the media storm raged on, Matthews's response came faster than expected. The first sign that he wasn't going to quietly fade into obscurity was a chilling statement issued from one of his legal teams. Matthews had gone on the offensive, accusing Elon of using stolen documents and making false claims. His lawyers threatened lawsuits, calling the expose a baseless attack on his reputation and business interests. He even tried to discredit the evidence, alleging that it had been manipulated to serve an agenda. But Elon wasn't about to back down now. He had anticipated this kind of counterattack. His team, already in possession of even more incriminating documents, had prepared for this moment. They were ready to fight fire with fire. That evening, Elon and his team released a second wave of information. This time, it was video footage of covert meetings and encrypted communications that directly linked Matthews to high-ranking political figures. The video footage was shocking. It showed Matthews, in intimate conversations with defense contractors and corrupt politicians, discussing deals that threatened to compromise the very future of space exploration. The videos spread like wildfire. The media couldn't ignore them. It was no longer just a matter of financial corruption. Matthews was caught red-handed conspiring to control the space industry for his own benefit, with no regard for national security or the future of humanity's reach beyond Earth. Within hours, Matthews's supporters began to fracture. Corporate leaders who had previously stood by his side started to distance themselves. Political figures who had been caught in the scandal tried to backtrack, issuing public denials or resigning from their positions. The unraveling was swift and unforgiving. But while Matthews's empire was crumbling, the battle for the future was far from over. The real danger was just beginning. Elon had underestimated just how far Matthews would go to maintain control. His influence wasn't confined to corporate boardrooms or political offices, it stretched deep into the military-industrial complex, and Matthews had more at his disposal than just wealth. He had connections, loyalty, and the power to mobilize resources on a scale that Elon could barely comprehend. A few days after the second wave of leaks, Elon's team was hit with a shock. A highly classified report surfaced, revealing that Matthews had ties to powerful factions within the military. These factions, once loyal to Matthews's vision of space dominance, now viewed Elon's efforts to expose the corruption as a direct threat to their own interests. The report detailed covert operations designed to undermine the stability of SpaceX's mission and capabilities. It wasn't just about spreading disinformation anymore. Matthews's people were actively sabotaging SpaceX's infrastructure, causing delays and disruptions that threatened to halt their projects altogether. Elon's team discovered that key personnel had been compromised, some had been bribed, others had been blackmailed. This wasn't just corporate espionage, it was a full-blown covert war. Elon slammed his fist on the table in frustration. He's trying to take us down from the inside. We can't let this go on. We need to root out the traitors. Sarah looked grim. It's worse than we thought. Matthews has his hands in everything. We've got to expose this, expose his network. If we don't act now, SpaceX could collapse under the weight of his sabotage. The decision was made quickly. Elon knew that they couldn't afford to let the enemy control the narrative any longer. If Matthews was trying to destabilize SpaceX, they would hit back harder, using everything they had at their disposal. In the following weeks, Elon and his team went on the offensive once more, exposing not just the financial corruption, but the hidden web of sabotage that Matthews had set in motion. Using a mix of insider knowledge, leaks, and previously undiscovered information, they were able to connect the dots between Matthews's military ties and his efforts to undermine private space missions. Elon knew that they had reached a tipping point. But even as the tide seemed to turn in their favor, he couldn't shake the feeling that Matthews was still playing a longer game. There were too many pieces on the board, too many unknowns. The final showdown was coming, and it was going to be bigger than anything they had faced before. The tension was palpable. Elon could feel it in every muscle, every nerve, every decision that weighed on him in those final days leading up to the culmination of this battle. Everything had been building toward this. Matthews had been stripped of his financial empire, exposed as a criminal mastermind, and his network had been unraveling piece by piece. Yet, even now, it felt as though Matthews was just biding his time, preparing for one last, devastating move. Elon wasn't one to back down, but this was different. The stakes weren't just personal anymore, they were global. The future of space exploration, the hopes of billions of people dreaming of a new frontier, all rested on this moment. If Matthews somehow regained control of his network, it could mean the collapse of private space ventures. The race for Mars and beyond could be lost to the shadows of corporate corruption and military agendas. "We're almost there," Elon said one evening, addressing his closest allies in a war room filled with a palpable sense of urgency. "We've exposed Matthews's financial ties, his network, and even his sabotage efforts. But now, we need to finish this. We need to end his influence once and for all." Sarah, standing at the table with a tablet in hand, nodded grimly. "The damage Matthews has caused is undeniable, but we've seen before that he can bounce back from anything. His resources are vast, and his power, well, it's hard to imagine anyone being able to take him down completely." "We have one last ace to play," Elon said, a dangerous calm in his voice. "I've been working with a few key players, people who owe Matthews something, or owe me something. We've gathered all the information we need, and we're about to do something that will shake his very foundation." Jeff leaned in, concern flickering in his eyes. "You're not planning something reckless, are you? We've come too far for that." Elon smirked, but there was no humor behind it. "This isn't reckless. This is strategic. Matthews has underestimated the reach of his own corruption. The final piece of the puzzle is his relationship with certain government agencies. If we can show that he has been orchestrating covert operations with military contractors to undermine private space initiatives, then we can expose him to the public in a way that will make his entire empire collapse. And this time, he won't be able to fight back. It was a dangerous plan, but it was the only plan left. Elon had worked tirelessly to assemble a team of whistleblowers, insiders, and journalists, individuals who had access to the highest levels of government and military. Using their combined knowledge, Elon was about to release evidence that would link Matthews to a series of covert military operations designed to sabotage SpaceX and other private ventures. These operations had gone far beyond anything he had originally imagined. The evidence was damning. It was a treasure trove of classified information showing Matthews's involvement in everything from cyber attacks on SpaceX's systems to orchestrating false flag operations to derail upcoming rocket launches. But what was even more shocking was the sheer scale of Matthews's influence. His tentacles had spread into the highest levels of government, military contractors, and even the defense industry. Elon felt the weight of it all as he prepared to pull the trigger on the final revelation. He knew this would change everything. The world would never look at Matthews the same way again. But there was no turning back. This was the moment. The plan was set in motion with military precision. Early one morning, the first leaks went public, shocking the world. Videos, documents, and confidential reports began circulating, exposing Matthews's involvement in covert operations designed to destabilize the private space industry. The evidence wasn't just circumstantial, it was irrefutable. The public response was immediate and explosive. News networks were bombarded with breaking stories about Matthews's links to military contractors and shady dealings with the government. Social media erupted with hashtags demanding accountability, and the once untouchable businessman was suddenly a pariah. But Matthews wasn't a man who would fall quietly. Elon had expected a counterstrike, but Matthews's response was swift and brutal. Within hours, Elon's team was targeted. Hackers infiltrated SpaceX's communications, spreading misinformation, creating chaos. For the first time, Elon felt the sting of vulnerability. His people, his technology, were being attacked from all sides. This wasn't just a corporate rivalry anymore. This was full-scale warfare. Matthews had used every resource at his disposal to retaliate, and now the fight was personal. Elon didn't flinch. He had been through too much, fought too hard. He knew that this was it, his final chance to win. "Lock it down," he said to Sarah, his voice firm and urgent. "Everything we've worked for could fall apart if Matthews isn't stopped now." Sarah, unwavering, nodded. "We've got this. We'll make sure his attacks don't go unchecked." For the next few days, the world watched in suspense as Matthews tried to weather the storm. His allies, those few who had remained loyal to him, began to distance themselves as the evidence continued to mount. But Matthews wasn't finished yet. His final play was yet to come, and Elon knew that whatever Matthews was planning, it would be catastrophic. Then came the twist. One evening, as Elon sat in his office, his eyes fixed on the screen in front of him, he received an encrypted message from an anonymous source. It was a simple phrase: "Matthews has one last card to play. It's already in motion." Elon's heart skipped a beat. What could it be? What was Matthews planning? Minutes later, Elon's worst fears were confirmed. News broke that Matthews had orchestrated an attack on a major satellite network, temporarily disabling critical communication systems. It was a calculated move, one designed to throw the world into chaos and shift public opinion. Matthews's people were trying to frame SpaceX for the attack, hoping to turn the public's anger toward Elon and his company. It was a masterstroke of manipulation, but Elon wasn't about to let it succeed. The world was watching, and if they believed that Matthews had orchestrated this sabotage, it could be the end of everything. "I'll handle this," Elon said, his voice ice cold. Get ready for the final reveal. We're going to expose Matthews for the last time, once and for all. The clock was ticking. Elon and his team worked tirelessly to gather the final pieces of the puzzle, the key information that would prove Matthews's role in the sabotage. Within hours, they had compiled irrefutable evidence linking Matthews's network to the satellite attack. The evidence was explosive. And then, as the world held its breath, Elon Musk made his final move. He went public with the proof, the truth about Matthews's betrayal, his manipulation of world events, and his covert operations. The world now saw Matthews for what he truly was, a dangerous mastermind whose lust for power had put humanity's progress in jeopardy. Elon didn't stop there. With the power of the media and public opinion behind him, Matthews's network crumbled under the weight of the evidence. The corrupt officials who had been complicit in Matthews's schemes were arrested, his assets were frozen, and his influence disintegrated overnight. As Matthews's empire fell apart, Elon Musk stood at the forefront of a new era, one where the future of space exploration was finally free from the shadows of corruption. The battle was over. Elon had won. But as he looked to the stars, he knew this was only the beginning of a new, uncharted journey. The final battle had been fought, but the war for the future was just starting. The dust had finally settled. The tumultuous battle that had consumed the world for months was over. Matthews, once an untouchable titan, was now a shadow of his former self, his empire in ruins. The corrupt network he had carefully built and maintained over the years had crumbled, and with it, the power he wielded in the world of politics, business, and military influence. But Elon Musk wasn't basking in victory. The final confrontation had taken its toll. While he had emerged as the victor, it had come at a personal cost. The tension, the betrayals, and the weight of the decisions he'd had to make had worn him down. He sat now, in the quiet aftermath of the storm, reflecting on everything that had transpired. The world was already moving forward, too. News reports were filled with stories of the consequences of Matthews's actions, the arrests of his allies, the dismantling of the corrupt institutions that had supported him. The public was learning just how deep Matthews's reach had been, how his manipulations had almost destroyed the potential for private space exploration, for the future of humanity itself. As Elon sat at his desk, his mind wandered back to the night he had received the final encrypted message: Matthews has one last card to play. It's already in motion. It had sent chills down his spine. He had been prepared for a fight, but nothing had prepared him for the scale of the attack Matthews had orchestrated. It was a wake-up call. The fight for the future wasn't just about battling corporations or corrupt individuals, it was about safeguarding the dreams of millions. And he had succeeded. But even in this moment of victory, Elon knew that the battle for the future of space was far from over. Over the following weeks, the dust continued to settle, but new opportunities began to emerge from the wreckage. Elon and his team used the momentum to advance the vision for SpaceX and to push forward with their projects, undeterred by the turbulence of the past months. The world had seen how quickly things could fall apart, how a few bad actors with enough power could threaten not just business, but entire global systems. But now, they also saw how quickly things could change for the better when truth, transparency, and innovation stood at the helm. SpaceX had been battered but not broken. In fact, it was stronger than ever. They'd launched several successful missions, and now, with Matthews out of the picture, they were finally free to operate without the threat of sabotage hanging over them. Elon knew that their next mission was perhaps the most important of all, the colonization of Mars, the ultimate frontier. Elon stood in the control room at SpaceX's headquarters, watching as engineers and astronauts prepared for the next big launch. It was a sight he had seen many times before, but this time, it felt different. There was a renewed sense of purpose in the air. "We've made it," Elon said quietly to Sarah, who stood beside him. Her gaze was focused on the preparations in front of them, but there was a soft smile on her lips. "We've made it, but it's only the beginning," she replied. "We're not just building rockets anymore. We're building the future." The future of humanity. In the months that followed, Elon found himself being approached by governments, corporations, and international organizations, all eager to work with SpaceX now that Matthews's influence had been eradicated. Elon was careful with his responses, always reminding those around him that the mission had never been about the money or the power, it had always been about a greater cause. A cause that had survived despite the corruption that had threatened to derail it. While Matthews had fallen, there was always the risk of others like him. But Elon had learned something valuable through the struggle, he couldn't focus on fighting the shadows. Instead, he needed to focus on building something that would outlast them. The future of space exploration was a beacon for humanity, a place where innovation, collaboration, and progress could thrive. And if anyone was going to see that dream realized, it would be him, and those who shared his vision. In a private meeting with Sarah and a few trusted allies, Elon shared his vision for the years to come. "I've been thinking a lot about what's next," Elon began, looking around the room at the faces of the people who had been with him through the hardest parts of the journey. "We've achieved something extraordinary, but it's just a stepping stone. The next phase isn't about fighting enemies. It's about working together to make the impossible possible." Sarah raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "And what exactly do you mean by that?" "I mean collaboration," Elon said with a determined look. "Governments, private companies, researchers, we need to unite. The dream of space exploration isn't one person's to own. It belongs to all of humanity. And if we're going to make Mars a reality, we need to foster global cooperation. We need a new space race, not one driven by competition and greed, but by shared goals and mutual respect." There was silence in the room as everyone processed Elon's words. Finally, Sarah spoke, her voice filled with resolve. "Then let's build it," she said. The world had learned that power, when unchecked, could corrupt, but also that even the most powerful figures could be brought down by the truth. Elon's victory over Matthews was not just a triumph of one man over another, but a victory for transparency, for innovation, and for the future. Now, as the rocket engines roared to life, sending another spacecraft into the unknown, Elon stood there, watching it disappear into the vastness of space. He knew that the journey was just beginning, and the future, both for Earth and for Mars, was waiting. The world had changed. And Elon Musk was ready to lead the way into a new dawn for humanity. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?